Ladies, gentlemen, and boys and girls of all ages, step right up for yet another fantastic episode of Liberty Inc., your source for all things liberty in North Carolina. I'm Rob Yates, your friendly neighborhood communications director, and I am excited to bring you today's episode. A couple of things. First of all, thank you for all of you who tuned in. We had some record numbers last week for the debate between Mike and Shannon, governor's debate, Mike Ross and Shannon Bray. I just feel really lucky to be a part of this. We got two awesome candidates, and no matter which way it goes, we are in good hands. But that leads me into the second point. It is election season. We need help. We need people to run. First of all, if you are on the mailing list, you're going to get some mails this week, mailings this week to remind you. We need candidates. We need volunteers. We need donors. We need all sorts of things. It's time to start taking this state back. Second of all, with the governor's race, check it out. Get involved. Go to either of their websites. Make a donation. We can't sit back and expect things to change. We have to force the change that we want to see. We need you all involved. On that note, we have a really cool episode this week. First, Ryan Brown, chair of the LPNC, comes back and is joined by MJ Hall, who is co-chair of the North Carolina Forward Party. And we chat for about 30 to 40 minutes, just looking at what it's like to lead a party, what their goals are, what they'd like to see in 2023. Then Erik Davis, who was a previous Democrat candidate for North Carolina 78, jumps in, and he and I go back and forth. We start off talking about areas where we have some common ground, and then we get into a little bit of areas where we have some disagreement. Then MJ and Ryan come back along with immigration activists and staunch leftist Lennin Caro, and we really have a good 45-minute discussion / debate. I'm really happy with this episode. And then, of course, at the end, Dub and Gru Talk Sports. Thank you for joining. Any questions, comments, feedback, love, hate, and everything in between, communications@lpnc.org. Enjoy. Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Rob Yates, Communications Director, Libertarian Party of North Carolina. And sitting with me is executives, perhaps royalty in North Carolina, if you will. We have, as you all met last week, the one and only Ryan Brown, chair of your LPNC, and then my good friend, MJ Hall, co-chair of the North Carolina Forward Party. And I was originally just going to have a discussion about third parties and some of the things that we're trying to do, ballot access. We will be having Erik Davis, who has run as a Democrat, on after this, and probably get into a little discussion about overlap and then some debate. That being said, when I found out it was MJ and Ryan, I felt very intimidated by the whole thing and thought maybe we could get more into a discussion about what it's like leading a political party in North Carolina, what the environment is, what the pressures are. Last week, you got to meet Ryan, the person, and we're all sorry you had to go through that. Ryan especially, he called me right afterwards to say, tell everyone I'm sorry about this. But now here we are, and I'm really excited to have these guests. So quick background, and then I'll shut up. When I first became communications director, I wanted to set, some meetings, get to know some people, and I reached out to MJ immediately, and I think she was like, who the hell is this idiot? But it's gone quite well. We have been able to talk to the whole Forward Party, and I will tell you this, there are a lot more areas where we really overlap in terms of wanting to get stuff done. We want to see politicians held accountable. We want to see some real criminal justice reform. I highly recommend you go check out their platform on the environment and energy, because it is nuclear, and more nuclear, and we love it. So both of you, thank you all for being here. Let me just start with each of you, and maybe MJ, you go first, but both of you just talk about, and Ryan, we talked about the party, the goals of the party last week. Talk about what it's like leading a political party in North Carolina.
Okay, leading a party in North Carolina, it's stressful. It's I guess to say the least. It's kind of intimidating, embarking on new territory, running into new challenges you never would expect. And essentially it's a lot harder to make a difference than I initially thought. There's a lot more obstacles. And, I'm just trying to give a voice to the silent majority. So focus on the things where people agree and not focus on the extremes, and that's actually kind of hard because I think the extremes have kind of taken over this country today. We're fighting for the polarity on the opposite side of the spectrum instead of focusing on the real issues that are taking away from the voice of the people, putting people first. And I think that's the most important thing to me, is putting people first. And that's probably the biggest challenge of starting a new political movement, is trying to listen to everyone, trying to figure out the best solutions that are appropriate for everyone, and making sure that we're keeping to that principle of giving a voice to the silent majority, and making sure you're not compromising your principles by also trying to make people like you, make people get support you. It's really challenging to keep your principles, to be a good leader, to listen to people, and to respond accordingly when issues rise. So
Ryan, before you answer, I got to ask, I think this is going to be a tradition when you're on. What are you drinking?
I was gonna ask you. I was gonna make a whole thing about how I was very upset you didn't ask me. Blue Moon.
I was hiding it. I was like,
Buffalo Trace tonight.
Yep, there you go.
Cheers to rebellion.
Cheers to rebellion. I think that was better for last week though.
I'm running with it. That's gonna
Can
be
I
your
cheer-
intro.
cheers to rebellion anyway.
Absolutely.
Hey, cheers to rebellion. There you go.
Raise a glass to freedom.
Raise a glass to freedom, something they can never take away.
So yeah, following up on MJ's
Cool.
comments,
Yeah,
what is it like running a political party in North Carolina?
yeah, thank you for the interruption, so I didn't have to come off as a bad guy there. Yeah, so what MJ was talking about, right? It is difficult to lead a party. And I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party. It recently got elected, and we have some of our own difficulties, but I know the Forward Party has a lot of their own difficulties, right? Cooper's Board of Election. I don't know if you guys have a chance to try and run into that buzzsaw, to get when you get officially recognized, but he's out there trying to keep the No Labels Party out. The state's always going to get involved and try and keep people off the ballot, just because apparently, more choices is, apparently a threat to democracy. But, so, there's different challenges. One of the things we are doing right now is trying to run candidates. So I'm going to harp on that a little bit. I know it's not part of your question, but if you want to run, get on the ballot and we'll help you out. But, we're trying to prove to the people, like, hey, we are libertarians. We're not extremists, even though extremists plays in the news well. We're not extremists. We just believe don't take people or don't hurt people.
Right. I got to jump in. I am wearing a cyberbully the government shirt.
Correct. Cyberbullying the
They're
government.
hurting the argument.
It's not actually an extremist position though, because there are plenty of people. There are plenty of people out there who would just love to, abuse people and take their stuff and violate their rights, and they're part of the government, so it's perfectly fine to cyberbully them. But yeah, it's tough. You got people working in different areas, working for different things, and kind of corralling people and making sure we're all working together. I mean, that's the big thing. The goal is to increase liberty in North Carolina, so I'm just doing what we can.
You talk about ballot access, and obviously we've been pretty lucky. I think we lost it in 2004 after 7 years, but then got it back in 2008, and we've had it since then. I can't help but think about, and if you take a look up on the screen, this is Mark Elias tweeting the other day talking about how he's the savior of democracy. And I would just like to remind everyone listening that Mark Elias last year filed a lawsuit to keep Matthew Hoh from the Green Party off of the ballot for absolutely no reason, except that Mark Elias is a huge donor to the Democrats, and Matthew Hoh being on the ballot could potentially hurt the Democrats. So Ryan, you mentioned No Labels. Certainly they've been in the news, and MJ, I know you talked to them some, but what are some of the other challenges you've seen just trying to establish yourself? I always think about the idea that you're not somebody, so you have enemies.
It's people thinking that we're just going to be another spoiler, thinking there's no point in trying to fight the system, thinking that they're just accepted their fate, that the government's just going to be in control. Going against the government is going to be even worse for them, so not even willing to take the risk, not realizing that the power is with the people. we vote for these guys, not the other way around. And, I think that's one of the big challenges, getting people to realize that they have a voice, their voice matters, and that they should use it more often, because a lot of people feel the same way you do. Even people you might not think feel the same way you do. I have discussions with Republicans, Libertarians, and then at the end of it, we're like, you know what, like, we disagreed on a lot, but there are a lot of things we agree on. And it's getting people to see past that, because all we see is the negativity, is the arguing extremism, and I can't talk to you because you believe one certain way. It's getting people to get over that and realizing that this whole thing is the system. I don't want to get too much into the system and then it's broken and all that, but I would say that's the hardest part, is getting people to realize they have more power than they think they do. And, you were talking about extremism, and I think it's funny that, I heard somewhere that good people rarely make history. And not saying that bad people need to take over. I'm saying that in Nazi Germany, the people that were assholes were people that were hiding Jews in their basements.
You have our kids making out with.
Exactly. The good people were sitting by as their neighbors being dragged out of their houses and shipped to internment camps, and concentration camps, so I think change is scary, but getting people to realize their power is probably the hardest part.
What is the saying? First they mock you, then they scorn you, then they I'll think of it as soon as this is over, but I'll put it up on
We'll
the
put it
screen.
in the
It's a
blooper reel.
famous-
Don't worry.
What? Yeah.
Well, on that point, there was a tweet from Spike Cohen, the VP candidate for the Libertarian Party in 2020, and he had a shirt on that said, "Good people break bad laws," and so there's a lot of bad laws out there, and there's no problem with a little bit of civil disobedience.
We actually give the Civil Disobedience Award, famously given by our candidate Mike Ross, to Pastor Moses this last year.
That's awesome. He deserves it.
Who has just been amazing for the party, but now Joshua's filed that lawsuit. I'll drop the link for this in the comments, because everyone should be following this. If you're not following the Pastor Moses Joshua Rohr situation, you need to be. So I do want to stay on the theme of ballot access, though. So Ryan, as you're looking at the Libertarian Party, how worried are you about ballot access? I know it's on your mind, but how concerned are you about us keeping it? Are there any numbers that make you worried? We got a year.
Right. So a couple of magic numbers. One of them is the previous cycle's presidential candidate was on the ballot in at least 35 other states. So 35 state ballot access is great for us, right? And currently, I think we have 47, 48. So that number is safe, right, at the moment. But you start mentioning, lawfare and everyone else, you could easily lose 4, 5, 6 states, right? So it's got to be careful with that one. And then I just looked at it recently, and so I should remember this number. I believe it is 2% of the vote for governor or the vote for president. If you get that in an election cycle, then you can maintain your ballot access.
Okay.
So those are the two magic numbers, 2% and 35 states.
All right, not bad. Well, we got to get our governor candidate get. I'm hoping for 40% of the vote.
Yeah.
But I'm not always realistic or practical, which is
It's
why
good to
I'm
have goals.
Yeah, that's why I'm in comms and not leadership. And if you're watching this, don't ever vote for me in leadership, because the party will go in a weird direction.
You would be great. That man's the man.
I'm very happy where I am. Well, let's talk about communications. And so, Ryan, we got into this a lot last week in terms of messaging and spreading the message. But MJ, when you're thinking about the forward party message, like what is forefront in your mind? What keeps you up at night, so to speak, and were you happy with where you're going?
What keeps me up at night? Honestly, I'm scared that, extremism will take over. I'm really worried about that, just because it's so much ground to capitalize off right now, where everyone's so scared about their rights, everyone's so scared about, their futures, and, it really is like a playground for hatred to spread. And that's terrifying to me. And I'm scared that we won't never make a difference in my lifetime. And
Can I ask a question on that? So when you say extremism,
yes,
I think this is important to be specific.
Right.
You probably mean more like polarization and anti the other guy, whoever that is.
Yes.
Okay.
Getting away from the heart of issues and focusing on just beating down the person in opposition to your viewpoint. You know, it's not about right and wrong anymore. It's not even about truth. It's the fact that we've gotten away from truth and we're kind of erring to more tribalism than anything. You know, you should be able to listen to someone who you might not like, but if they're saying something that's honest, it's irrefutable, then you should listen to them. Then it still should be valid. It still should be listened to. And I'm worried that it's a popularity contest, and that popularity contest is going to basically be the demise of our country.
I mean, how else are you going to change someone's mind
If you're not popular, or
if you're not listening to the person?
exactly. Yeah, you know, and I think we just stop listening. There's no nuance anymore. And, you know, if someone's just a Republican or if someone's just a Democrat, you can't be friends with them. And I'm trying to put it into that. I'm trying to get to the person that's behind the ideology, where the ideology comes from, you know, not just focusing on our principles, but why we have those principles, who's pushing those principles upon us. That's what keeps me up at night, is that the confusion is going to be confused as truth. And I don't know. I don't want to live in an extreme country. You know, I have friends that came from extreme countries that survived under fascism and communism, and they're like, we don't want to see that happen here, you know. So that's terrifying to me. But that's what keeps me up at night. If that make any sense?
No, it absolutely does. And you and I, obviously, I asked a question about extremism because we've discussed this off the camera, and Ryan and I have talked about this a lot too. So being a libertarian, one of the things that Larry Sharp said at our convention, and that I discussed with him on the podcast and I've brought up several times, is that almost no one joins the Libertarian Party a libertarian. People come to the party a disenchanted Republican or Democrat or something else. Now 6 months later, they're waving their ANCAP flag and screaming cyberbully the government, right? But extreme messaging, non-nuanced messaging, dismissive messaging just turns people away. And so I will say that when Andrew Yang first started running, I gave $100 to his campaign and I got a forward t-shirt. And I'm not. I mean, I know we like to joke, I'll make you a libertarian, you make me for it. I'm not, because there's just things that I differ too far. But I am so supportive of your movement because you're principled. And one thing that we've talked about is my goal is that in 20 years, it's libertarians running against the Forward Party, and we're arguing on principles, not on people. So I want to come full circle, Ryan, to something you and I talked about last week, but I think we should be beating this dead horse. So not just running candidates, but decentralization, hyperlocalization. How do you see us being able to work together, and not just Forward and Libertarian, but anyone else who wants to, I don't want to say undermine, because I want to be subversive, but I don't want to acknowledge we're being subversive. But just take away this machine, this power structure that is so good at keeping itself in place.
Right. So, I mean, if you look at polls in the federal government and everyone, no one likes the representatives they elect. They're sitting at like what, teens or maybe double digits just because the other guy screwed up more. Right. And then you look at state, and most people are like, all right, lukewarm on their state guy. And then most people have probably a semi-positive view of their local elected official, mostly because you can go talk to the guy down the street in the neighborhood because he's your mayor, right? You don't have to try and fly to DC and go through 7 layers of staffers to find a guy who's actually just partying with a lobbyist, right? So, you know, when it comes to that hyper localization, if you know the people who support you, then you're actually going to have an easier time trying to interact with these people, trying to affect real change in your life. So when it comes to like the local aspect, if we can convince people, we don't necessarily have to be radical about it, but if we can convince people at a local level, hey, this is the goal we want to accomplish, and we can accomplish it better in this way, or we can cut a cost here, or we don't have to have this program, or we can stand up to the feds, whatever it is. Most people in your neighborhood or your city, like I live in Creedmoor, North Carolina, right? There's a couple thousand people here, and we're probably pretty similar in what we believe, at least at the local level. So if we want to make a change, it's pretty easy at the local level, and we can resist something the state or the federal government does if it's something that we don't like. So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but that does focus on local a little.
It does, but you actually, so going on and continuing on with Larry Sharp. So something I was chatting with Larry about is his House representative, federal House, is everyone's favorite Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
I like her.
What?
I liked her at first.
Well, I liked you at first. No, but actually, that's kind of what I was going to say. So one of the things we talked about is like, no matter what you think of her stance now, credit where it's due, it wasn't as grassroots as she wants you to think. She had a bunch of money from Justice Democrats, but she was on the pavement every day, knocking on doors, pushing. She did take down the number 3 person in the Democratic Party. I mean, she really went against the establishment.
Yeah.
The reason I brought her up is because look at what's happened to her. Like, she's become another celebrity. She's a pop star. She's a pop star in Congress. But the challenge we face is like keeping up with the Kardashians has 12 million viewers and they have 200 million Instagram followers, and our parties get, a couple 100,000. How do we beat the celebrity politician?
Well, I think we got to change the system completely. We got to change the politics that's like this black box that seemingly good intentioned politicians go into, and then they come out and, they're $40 billion richer, or, we have to change the way that politics is ran, the incentives for why people run, and what happens once they win, and how they maintain their place in politics. You do have this kind of sellout in a lot of ways. And I think that's a problem with the vessels of power. We need to change those vessels of power so where people are in power for the right reasons, and they maintain it by showing up and doing the things they said they would run on, being the person that you said when you were trying to get my vote.
So that's interesting though. So you say when they're in power for the right reasons. So I think there are a lot of politicians who never have that. And they have last names like Bush or Biden or Clinton or Cheney. Their political families, they're groomed from the beginning. They're in politics because that's what they do. But what about people like AOC? So she probably went into politics for the right reasons. Now, I disagree with every single conclusion she had on how to fix those problems. So her observations, I think, were accurate. And now she's a pop star. She's posting basic pictures about going to yoga, and then she gets up there and she's like, oh, I had to wrestle with the problems of marrying a white man in a contemporary. And it's like, really, get all the racial dynamics out of it. Are you in love or not? This is virtue signaling in its worst form. And she's going to a $30,000 a ticket Met Gala with a tax the rich dress. I mean, she's a caricature of a person. And it's not to dump on her. That's what they all are. Right. I mean, the few that have held on to what they were, for example, maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's like, well, she's insane. So you either have to totally sell out or be insane.
Or be Ron Paul.
Ron Paul is not a human being. He's a god. And there's a reason he was able to do it.
Sure.
I mean, even
it's hard to, because when you're in there and you're fighting for the right things, you're an outlier. She did propose a bill recently about, stopping insider trading. And I really agreed with that one. She was like, politicians should not be able to profit off of this while they're in office, and
it does seem to make sense. I would say that politicians shouldn't be able to make regulation that could help companies so it doesn't matter if they trade.
Right.
If we just got rid of insider trading by politicians, I'd be comfortable with that start.
But I don't think she could do that. I don't think she could pull that off just because of, I don't think they will let that happen. And because she is embarrassing now. So she's also a mockery of politics. But, she's a mockery that had a good idea that will never come to fruition because, she did sell out in a lot of ways. But I think we just need to destroy that whole thing. Oh, did I sound libertarian of me?
Hey, I'll talk to the system if you want. The system is set up in such a way that, if you look back at the founding and they're like, well, what do we have? And they're like, a republic, if you can keep it, right? We're not a republic anymore. We are we are an oligarchy basically, right? So there's a bunch of these different people and they all fund the same, machine operations. And then you know, in the case of Obama, he got elected, and if you look on WikiLeaks, you look at all the Hillary Clinton emails and whatnot, you got might have been Bank of America or JP Morgan or whatever telling Obama who his cabinet's going to be. You know, I mean, there's no fixing that. So, you know, again, I'll loop it back to the local, but like the federal politicians and the state politicians only have power because we basically concede that power to them. So if we, you know, act locally as a city, as a county, as a township, whatever it is, and we just decide something's, you know, we're not going to be part of that, then they're either going to have to do it, they're either going to have to come in and have another Waco or Ruby Ridge or whatever it is, which, you know, doesn't play well in the news, or you're going to get 200 or 300 other counties and they're all going to do the same thing, and there's going to be sort of a crisis of confidence in the feds.
I totally agree with that.
Well, and Red, where you're spot on is that if it gets a little bit of traction, you don't need Waco or Ruby Ridge. If you have 10 counties in North Carolina, especially rural North Carolina, where there's probably as many firearms as and to be fair, it's like, well, we'll send the army, and then the military bases are unloaded. Like, nah, we're with them.
Or they're just like, hey, I'm out of it, man. You know, I'm here to fight the bad guys, and
which
this
is
my brother.
Just enough. And we take it to the extreme, but that's sort of like the natural way to finish the conversation. We don't need to take it to the extreme. Like, if, for example, if everyone in the country just didn't pay income taxes, it would all just collapse the next day. But if half the country pays income taxes, what you do is you fund the enforcement mechanism to go after the half that didn't pay income taxes. So you're never going to get unity at the federal level. On the flip side, when you look at, like, for example, this last, what was it, a $4 trillion budget that passed? And it's something insane. And I will actually, if for people watching, check out the screen, because Ryan and I had some fun looking at some of the waste on Twitter, and we're just posting back and forth. There was like $137 million. Was it $137 million to, like, what happens to mold in the fridge or something like that?
Yeah, it's just absurd things.
But that works on a federal level. You can't get away with that at a local level. So, like, right now in Mecklenburg, they just passed a bill for a $200 million tennis facility. Now, this is ridiculous. Tennis isn't really popular, you know, anywhere, but especially not in Charlotte. That's a tennis joke. I apologize if you like tennis. I didn't mean to offend
we should
anybody.
bully the people who want to play tennis. Oh, wait, no, sorry. We wouldn't bully the people who want to fund it with government money, not tennis players.
So that's the serious thing. The dude that is getting this facility was like bidding against Tepper for the Panthers in 2008, I think. Like, this is a guy who's not worried about his next mortgage payment, you know. And my property taxes just went up like 68% so that he doesn't have to pay for a tennis facility. And they're like, it's going to bring $300 million to the Charlotte area. And it's like, well, you took 200 million. Like, where are you going? And am I going to see that 300 million? Like, that doesn't affect. So you're just taking my money. But at a local level, we can see this and we can hold city council accountable. Now, I'm not super hopeful for where Meck's going in the next 5 years. But where you live in Raleigh now, though, don't you?
I live in Durham in the RTP area. I work in a lab, so that's where all lab jobs are, and it's really easy. But
Susan might work there.
But I think you're right about politics being local. You know, that's where it really starts. And I think you said to me before that you think local politicians are more corruptible. Can I? To some degree, sometimes.
Did you say corruptible or incorruptible?
Corruptible.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I'll give you the non-intuitive.
No, I'm just lying.
I'll give you the non-intuitive. Walter Block defending the indefensible. Right? It's better to have a bribable local politician or local cop, because you can bribe them to defend you against the feds and the state from other ways. Right? So would you rather have a cop arrest you for having just a little bit of weed, or would you rather be like, all right, you can take my weed if you let me go? You know? So yeah, it's a little, it's a little theory, libertarian theory, right? But it makes you think, right? Like, but the root of it is, though, if you have someone you're in contact with who you can either negotiate or communicate with, who's not just a nameless, faceless person, then you have better chance to affect the outcome of whatever goal you're going for.
And
That's true.
it really does work out the smaller you get. So imagine like a hypothetical township, if you will, of 3 people,
Okay,
and 2 of them are running. Then if that person who wins does a bad job, he or she's definitely getting voted out the next time. And as you slowly expand, you're just more accountable at a smaller level. So you may be more corruptible. And what I mean by that is, like, you need press to expose corruption,
right.
because everyone could find out about it. And if there's no way to spread that message, then no one really cares. It's like if you're in a town of 3,000 and 300 people know you're corrupt, but 400 go vote for you because they don't know, you get away with it. And if the press doesn't care about some small town, although I do think North Carolina is better structured in terms of local newspapers and local radio stations, and so you're going to see more of that.
Right.
But yeah, I do think local politicians are more corruptible, but they can also do less damage.
Less damage. I mean, because it's on a smaller scale, right?
Yeah, like if the Charlotte City Council wanted to take my house,
Right.
like I'm actually going to fight back.
Right.
If the federal government's trying to take my house, what am I going to do?
That's true. How much?
I mean, I'm going down swinging, but
Well, here's the real problem, and I'll take this into like way out of left field, right? You know, because of I don't know if it was during the podcast or not, but we were talking about, you know, being anti-war as a libertarian, right? One of the consequences of the wars is that we have all this surplus military equipment. So, you know, you're talking about the city of Charlotte in Mecklenburg, you know, giving $200 million to somebody, but they were also, I think, at the same meeting or the meeting before or after, debating whether or not to spend $6 million on a helicopter and another $1 million on a bomb-proof, you know, robot. And it's just this sort of thing. And
after just dropping $500,000 on some sort of all-terrain vehicle that can go into houses for explosives.
What?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's crazy. So at some level, even these large metro, you know, cities like Raleigh, Durham, Mecklenburg, Greensboro, even, you know, some of these people are almost being like a little mini, you know, state governments, because just they're equipped with it seemingly unlimited money and the same sort of crap you get out of the drug wars and the armored vehicles and the body armor and the camo for whatever reason.
Yep. When their campaigns financed too by external parties. Meanwhile, like my HOA, I came in too, my eyes open. I agreed to come here. It's like they argue about, do we need a new playground? Like, all right, we all can have our say on that.
Yeah.
One of the things that amazed me, there was a situation going on. So Charlotte is interesting in that North Carolina has very restrictive zoning laws in general, but Mecklenburg is particularly bad. But what happens is developers come in and make these requests. They buy big parcels of land,
right,
and then they ask for rezoning. And I'm often against that, because while I think we should get rid of zoning laws, period, what's even worse to me is the selective enforcement of zoning laws based on a developer. And then when you go look at the city council, they fund, and Ryan, we actually talked about this because they funded one of the people at a significant amount, it's like $140,000 or something. And the rest, it's like 1,000, 5,000, 25,000 sometimes. But the developers just pay for these city council members and they get to make the zoning laws. And so what happens is the zoning laws don't do any of the things they're intended to do. They just prevent other people from being able to build. So the developers can go in, buy the land, and then put up whatever they want on it. And it doesn't matter how it affects communities around them. But they wanted to do one right next to my neighborhood. And we pushed back pretty hard. And one of the big things is that I live in a predominantly Black neighborhood. And it's a pretty nice neighborhood, just on my neighborhood. And there was a big pushback, like, you all want to talk about equity and trying to right historical wrongs, and this is a Black neighborhood living the American dream. Like, we've worked hard. There's a lot of people retired here, and they wanted to put like 186 houses on 3 acres. They were like tall, skinny houses. Yeah, it's crazy. But Which again, if there were no zoning laws and you bought the land, then I say go for it. The market will solve that, but this is not the market solving it. This is selective enforcement. So we've gotten off track. We've gotten into zoning laws.
Say, where you going with this one,
No,
Rob?
it's a fun conversation. It's awesome.
I will say
really-
though, I'll take the contrarian point. If they were to have previously zoned it in one way and then gotten rid of the zoning laws, or essentially zoned it for any use, which I don't even know if is a thing, I'd still support it. So
I would support it if they did it at a large scale.
like the whole county or
if-
something.
Yeah, if they're just going in and it's like, so this 3 acres is now any use zoning, but the 3 acres right next to it remains zoned the way it was previously. And that's how they were trying to do it.
I'd still might
They
take it.
They didn't anticipate any pushback. They thought, you know, we were just gonna.
No, I mean, now we are getting into the weeds, but
Oh, sorry.
it's fine. They do it in a bunch of places and they anticipate pushback and then they get away with what they can.
Yeah.
Because then what really happens is places with money push back harder. And so then they don't do it there. So then it's just,
And they come back in 6 months and try again anyways.
well, yeah, that's probably true. But so, all right, we are clearly passionate about issues. Getting back to party leadership, how do you take the passion about things that are really local concerns, like zoning laws, like criminal justice reform, which is an area that we agree on extensively, like clean energy, and nothing related to the environmental side of it, but Duke spilled how many tons of coal ash into the river and then got a slap on the wrist for it. Nuclear power seems to solve a whole lot of this. And I know Duke runs the nuclear power plants, but it's about regulatory capture. How do we take the passion on these issues and convert it into actual electoral success?
One, holding Duke accountable, like really accountable. They have a bunch of money, of course they could just pay it off. But when they mess up things like that, when you spill into a large natural resource, being held accountable. And I think another part of that is information. People have like the wrong ideology when it comes to nuclear power, you know? And I'm a proponent, I support it because it's actually energy efficient. You know, electric is not just this green efficient way that's going to save the planet, which is kind of what I thought initially, until you start looking into it and you're like, actually, it kind of makes sense to use nuclear power. And I think we should open up the ones that we close down, but that's kind of extreme. But I think holding places accountable and spreading more information instead of misinformation about energy, and you know, really letting people know that it's about money, it's about politics. You know, they want to control the markets and really keep their assets. It's not really about, they care about the environment, or they care that, you know, a bunch of fish died and, you know, we can't keep drilling into fossil fuels. That's not a problem when they can poison a river system. So accountability and spreading information.
Well, I agree. But let me, Ryan, let me follow up with you on that. How do we actually do that? Because it's tough. Like, you're fighting press that is often bought and sold. You're fighting social media that's bought and sold. How do we get the message out effectively?
Yeah, so you know, she talked about not spreading misinformation, right? And in general, it's probably not good to spread misinformation. But of the positive, let's call it 7 years, there's been people who are just off their rocker talking about stuff that people with their own eyes can see, and they just realize, like, this is not true. You're out there trying to tell me that the sky is, like, you know, the sky is not blue. Like, we all know the sky is blue, and you're trying to do this. So because people were just off their rocker saying whatever they felt like was right without checking it, there is actually a distrust in the media. There's a distrust among politicians. There's a distrust among, you know, the establishment. And we can use that to our benefit. So we can go out there and say, hey, look, I've got this principle. In my case, I'm a libertarian. I believe don't hurt people, don't take their things. And, you know, you probably can't see it, but I've got the Southern Poverty Law Center, you know, magazine hidden right here in the screen. And, you know, in last summer, they ran a story about how I was a, you know, white supremacist nationalist or whatever, and the Libertarian Party is alt-right. And it's just, you sit there and you're like, that's just not even true. Like, you know, they're just making up stuff. They're not checking any of it. So you have to
I'm a little jealous, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. Well, We didn't even get a shout out in the yearly magazine, but you know, it's close. But you know, the thing is like you have to you have to go out there and you have to look and you have to talk to real people, and you say, look, you know, these people are slandering me. They think I'm crazy and whatever it is, and I just believe in this very simple, like, let's just do things and, you know, not hurt people and do it. And you know, there's a lot of alternative media. Social media is awesome. Winning elections and actually showing people like, hey, we've got people who, you know, are doing something to cause a real change. You know, we got X number of people elected to the city council. We implemented these policies, and we've got 3 new businesses, and everyone's having fun. Right? So that's what it really takes, starting locally and then going through and just working through the slog of having people lie about you, having people put out stories. I don't know. It just, you got to take it and make people believe and act genuine, and then people will come around eventually.
Not too genuine sometimes. I know our party.
Well, yeah, I did clean up my table before I recorded. So.
I wonder if it'd be a way to like create a new news source, you know, like an independent voice, you know, that's popular, like that's like a Fox or CNN, but you know, well, they probably would shut that down in a heartbeat. So
I do think about it, and that's what I'm trying to do with the podcast and the newsletter. And it's not, I don't pretend to be an unbiased voice, but I'm very clear about what my bias is, and I try to back up what I say.
Yeah.
So then the things that I put out that are subject to disagreement, you have a factual basis with which to disagree. And when I say it's everyone in the party. It's the people writing for my newsletters, people coming on the podcast, it's situations like this, and then get other voices. One of the things that amazes me when we talk is how much we really agree on.
yeah.
And there are a few big differences. And there are definitely a few things where you're like, wait, Rob, you really are crazy.
I'm not getting rid of my license, okay? I'm not doing it.
Like I said, if this compromise was driver's licenses, I can live with it.
And no 400-hour you know, haircutting license.
My God, I just paid my property tax bill on my car. That one stings for days.
I'm still
Ryan's,
on mine.
And you'll be happy to know, and I'm not going to say what because I don't want to blow up her spot on the podcast, but MJ is doing the exact same thing that you were. Hashtag become ungovernable.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Do it.
Well, I'll put it in the comments. We'll figure. You all can figure it.
No. You got to listen. Come on, Rob. You're my propaganda guy, but they got to listen to the last episode to understand what it is.
Oh, fully. Yes, there you go. Exactly. Go back, listen to Ryan's episode, find out what he did, and then know that the chairs of the 2 biggest non-Republican Democrat parties in North Carolina are becoming ungovernable.
Yes,
which is amazing. So I think that is a really good place to wrap it up. We're coming up in about 30 minutes. Let me close by asking both of you, like, the rest of this year, 2023, what would you like to see from your parties, and what do you want to do yourselves to bring it there? So Ryan, I'll kick it to you first.
Sure. So we are focusing heavily on local elections. So we have already had a few Libertarian candidates register. We have plenty more who are going to register or are thinking of registering. By the end of this year, I'd love to have 5 elected Libertarians, new elected Libertarians. You know, just start local and show people that, hey, we found these people before they got elected. We helped them get elected, and we're going to try and help them implement change in North Carolina. And, you know, maybe that won't bring us an immediate gain in the next 2024, you know, General Assembly election. But maybe 26, 28, we start winning these real seats because people have been seeing us govern at a local level for 10 years and see the good that we're doing.
Yeah. This year, mostly, I want to get on the ballot for sure. And I would like to have some candidates, like local candidates for sure. I do want to build more coalition organizations that are actively doing something in their communities, you know, and just give that more attention than anything. Is that, you know, people are out here really putting in the work, like the Libertarians, you know, like the Fordists, and they're really trying to do something together, and we're working together, and that it's possible. You know, if it's possible for us to do it, then it can be done on a mass level, you know. So I really want to strengthen our friendship and our work together. I do want to go on the ballot. I do want some candidates, you know, so there's gonna be a little competition there. but I really just want to actively do something for North Carolina to make it better and work together to fight back against, corrupt politics and corrupt police officers and to become ungovernable. So that's
Rob,
my goal this year.
Sorry to cut you off. Let me reply to that. Talking about coalitions, there's one coalition we will always have, and it's any other political party looking to come onto the ballot, right? Just because we understand that you said competition, right? And that's exactly what it is. It's competition. Competition makes us so we're not lazy as libertarians, and it makes it so you guys aren't lazy as a forward party. It makes us actually compete and try and help the people. So if there is one thing we can do and maybe help you with ballot access press or a letter to the Board of Elections or whatever it is, we'd be happy to help you guys out there in that way.
Maybe you can hire somebody to count all the ballot, access signatures we get, because they don't like us at the Board of Elections. I think it would be really nice.
I'm
Which
sure
I
they
guess
don't.
that was
I'm not going to say anything because I don't know who. That'll be like the one clip that comes out. Libertarian Party Communications Director bashes Board of Elections.
Cyber bullies the government on the podcast.
Yeah, it's a lot. But
Ryan, MJ, thank you so much for your time. I love these kind of conversations. I want to keep this one going. I want to get you both back on, not just this time, but in several in the future, and track our progress over this year, next year, and hopefully in 10 years, it'll be the three of us, if I'm still alive, let's be honest. But having a real policy debate about something that we're trying to get moved one way or the other, and the other two parties are just not even a factor anymore. So
Sure.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Rob.
appreciate you, Rob.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Thank you for tuning in. I am stoked tonight. We have Erik Davis, who ran as a Democrat for North Carolina 78. He's an education advocate who has stepped back from that a little bit to seek proper employment, if you will, in his preferred line of work, which is geography. And he has agreed to come on tonight to discuss and debate, talk about areas where we have some overlap and work together, and some areas where we might disagree, and prove to the country that it's possible to have a civil disagreement. So Erik, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. It's nice to be on here. It's I want to thank you for welcoming me on here. There's so many that even when we agree, we still don't have this kind of back and forth.
Yep.
So
Well, no, dude, it's my pleasure. Thank you for joining. So I actually want to start off with a question. I give you what we would talk about beforehand, but this is a new one, but I want to get your honest reaction, and this is why, because this is interesting to me, so you're helping me out.
all right.
When you hear libertarian, what do you think of? What's a libertarian to you?
That is actually one of the reasons why I wanted to come on to this, because I know there's this quasi feeling of what libertarian means, but I know that there are tiers in there. Like you have some that are strict, no regulation on anything, no government on anything, and then you have the others that are they're more there are times in which it is appropriate and things like that, and what rights, how far rights go. So one of the reasons why I wanted to come on here was I don't want to end up being that guy who's just straw manning and perpetuating this this false image, so I wanted to hear what you have, but then also give my own light, try to figure out what we can.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. I love the conversation. So what is a libertarian is something that, so we've been a party for 52 years now. Yeah, it's 2023, and we still haven't really figured it out. But there is a range. You have everything from your full-throated anarcho-capitalists, and you can have, there are libertarian socialists. I don't in any way attempt to keep them out of the party. I just think that they're not really socialist if it's voluntary, but that's a whole separate philosophical discussion. They're just cooperatives, all the way up to roughly like a full classical liberal, like the government should protect the market and maybe try to get involved a little bit. Once you get past that, you're starting to either branch off into Republican light or Democrat light. And
Yeah.
but I would say that there are a few things that all libertarians agree on 100%. So first of all, our ethos, the non-aggression principle, don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. That is, no one will argue with that. And two, principle over party. So you have small L libertarians, big L libertarians, philosophical versus party, but no libertarian, and it's part of the reason we have a lot of trouble defining ourselves, is willing to sacrifice principle to advance party interests. And it's actually the first thing I want to kind of pick on you on a little bit about is that I feel that the big problem with the Republicans and the Democrats, and I think the Democrats are much worse right now. That's not siding with Republicans. I think they did an excellent job of being horrible about this for about 17 years. But it is advancing the interests of the party. So vote blue no matter who. Like, you got to be Team Democrat, and they are willing to put aside all sorts of principles.
Yeah, that's something that, but before I ran, it's something I criticized heavily. And then as I ran, you could still see it, especially, as a candidate. I want people to, like, when they vote, right? People should have the right to vote, and that's great. We just really need to have people actually voting because of because they believe in this, or they believe that this candidate holds this, not this person has a D, this person has an R, I'm going to vote for them. Like, vote for the person who actually relates to what you want, what you need. And the candidates themselves, they need to reflect that. So I don't like the two-party system. I wish that we had a viable party where you take the good from these and to benefit everyone, instead of you have to run this, you have to run this. Because if you don't, the odds of you having a chance are nothing, and you have to follow certain things. So I fully understand where you're coming from there.
That's fair. I guess the thing that concerns me, in particular when I say concerns, like the direction of our country.
Mhm.
So one area where I probably overlap philosophically with more Democrats is the environment. Now I don't want regulation at all, because I want the environment to get better. And to me, the worst thing that can happen is the government get involved. And I'm happy to jump into that in a minute, but the Green Party exists to promote environmental causes almost exclusively. I mean, they're green socialists, and they really are. That's their ethos. Last year, Matthew Ho tries to run for Senate. The Green Party goes out, they get, I think, 23,500 signatures or something like that. You need 14,007, I want to say, but they were bored. Then June, the Elias law firm with Mark Elias, who huge Democratic donor, especially in North Carolina, files a lawsuit against the Green Party, keeping Matthew Ho off the ballot. And
I remember that, and
it got
was
thrown
against
out.
that.
I mean, he had nothing, but he delayed him for 45 days.
Yeah, and that can, I mean, even though it is a third party, that is a huge amount of time to lose, especially whenever you're first getting started, because it's that first start that really helps, because that gets it rolling, gets your name out there, gets the publicity out there. And if your opponents have already gotten that, then there's no real chance unless there's a major upheaval or scandal that happens.
So from the perspective of someone in the Democratic Party, how do you stop that?
That's a good question. I mean, short of electing, a new group of people who are more open to saying, okay, because I think what the reasoning was, if we had this third party, it could pull votes from the partisan thing. But that's the point of the right to vote. You're supposed to have this, even if it pulls from the parties. If we start making those concessions, where are we going to stop that? It's like, we can only make this concession if it benefits my party. And then, of course, if the other party gets in control, they'll just do the same thing. And then it just starts this curtailing of voting rights that just because you didn't want some votes to be pulled from your party.
So for me, and because like I want to tear down the two parties. And I mean, I really do. And I think that there are a lot of good people and rational people in the parties who are subject to this sort of ideological capture because they're taught that anger and fear of the other party taking over is more important than their principles in their party. And I think you see it going on, and I hate to bring up national stuff because I love to focus on North Carolina, but with RFK Jr. right now. And I'm not some RFK Jr. stan. Like, there are some interesting things he's doing that I think should be part of the narrative. And there are some things that I really, really dislike about him that we're glossing over. But for me, no matter what you thought about the COVID response and the vaccine and stuff, he is bringing this incredible spotlight on the regulatory capture and this revolving door between industry and the FDA. And that should be a problem no matter who you are. If you want small government, you want that away. If you want government accountability, you don't want the regulators beholden to industry.
Yeah.
To me, it is inevitable. If the drive is to get power, if it's vote blue no matter who, or the red wave is coming, are you part of it? Then your incentive is to promote your side. It becomes almost a team sport.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those really, really annoying things because I can see, like, I understand that vote blue, vote red, because the emphasis is, we need to get in power. That way we can then, enact these things that we're trying to do. And if we can't do that, then it's gridlocked. But then again, it just goes back to, but what about the voting rights of the people? What about what people want, individually instead of collectively? And yes, both need to be respected, individual and the collective, on these topics. But it's one of those things that it's difficult to quantify how to fix it, because it's not something that any individual can do. It's something that everyone has to collectively come together and say, you know what, we need to stop this. We need to make this socially unacceptable so that we can move on to whatever. Because that's pretty much the only way things get done nowadays, especially with like gridlock Congress. They don't ever do anything when they're gridlocked unless there's some social change that forces them, and like, okay, I'm going to lose my election unless I do this.
Well, it's a family show, if you will. So I'll modify, but George Carlin's famous line, bipartisan is just code for the government's about to really screw you.
Yeah. Yeah, I want see, I wish we didn't need bipartisan, because we just had
issues.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, this basically, I wish that people who ended up being elected were less focused on themselves and increasing where they are at, and more focused on actually making the country better. And yes, there are plenty of elected officials that do that, but there are so many, and the most influential are the ones that are just trying to further their career. And it ends up, the easiest way to do that is to create this dichotomy between the left, the right, the Libertarians, the Green Party, all unaffiliated, because then we can't actually come together to figure out, okay, you know what, we actually agree on these things. I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican, but we agree on this. And that's one of the things I did while I was running, was I purposely went to Republican areas to try to figure out, yes, we disagree, but can we try to figure out some things that we agree on, so that because I mean, yes, it does bring back, bipartisanship, but if we actually agree on it, it's not one person giving a concession to the other person giving a concession. It's, we both want this, so let's,
That's, I want to follow up on that. So I disagree with almost all of your positions, but I've looked into you and you are a principled person. You're a good dude. Like I told Ryan before this, our chair, that like Erik's a libertarian in the making, because he's a principled person. And I really did say that. I mean, I'm half teasing, but like, I'm very interested in talking to principled people from the other parties, because to me, it's crazy to think that like we can break that because it's only getting worse. The polarization's only getting worse.
Yes.
And so you look at like like, so, and I hate bringing the national stuff, but it's like Donald Trump gets impeached for Russia collusion, which turns out to basically be false. But meanwhile, we've ignored the like 300 other crimes that he's committed in the last year. And then Biden is arguably taking, I mean, almost definitely taking money from foreign powers at some point. His son is, to call him a loose cannon is really being polite. And like, you can't talk about that if you're in the Dems because it might make the Dems look bad. And it's like, why not just call bad
Just
people
fix
bad
the problem? Yeah, it's like I feel that it should be enforced on every. I mean, it. Even though I am a Democrat, I am sometimes not as vocal about it. But I disagree. If I disagree with what other Democrats are doing, or if I feel they need to be held accountable, like, yo, we need to fix this. I'm not always as vocal about it, partially because, you know, on Twitter it's a cesspool there, but
100%. But for what it's worth, I went through your Twitter like pretty extensively actually to see if you ever contradicted yourself. And again, from a policy perspective, I don't agree with almost anything you said, but there was nothing contradictory. And when you were going after the Republicans, it was on their hypocrisy. And like, I can respect that. I agreed with a lot of you coming after them there because they're doing the same nonsense that I see the Dems doing.
Yeah, I want to be like, I want to try to show that, you know, it's anytime that I target the Republicans for something like that, I try to be like, okay, yes, the Democrats also do this, but in this case, you know, the Republicans are doing it more.
But how much is that like, all right, I'm a Philly football or a Pennsylvania football fan, and yeah, Michael Vick might have killed some dogs, but Ben Roethlisberger raped women.
Yeah,
Like, aren't they both just bad?
Yeah, I hate that it goes back to the whataboutism a lot. In which case, yes, I'm saying, yes, okay, we do this, but we do that. And I don't think I always do it, but I try to come back to how about we try to fix the issue entirely, and you know, I know I don't always do that, but that's what I try to do, at least when I remember.
I'll support you. I think you have. I've seen it. I mean, I promise you, if I didn't see that and you were on this podcast, this would be a very different conversation. Like, we'd be pulling up screenshots. If you have any influence, Kyle Parrish we really want to get him on, because I actually think there's a good person under there, but he loves to talk about, I want to build bridges and then just attack people. And it's like, dude, your actions and your words are not aligned. But so coming full circle, so I got a tweet. Ryan's listening in and he sent me a Kyle Parrish Twitter, and I might take this out, but it's kind of funny. Coming full circle, you asked, so what is a libertarian? The problem with the libertarians is that we're too far in the opposite direction. Like, if anyone strays one step from what we think is principled, we're going after ourselves, and it's like hardcore. And so then we ignore the fact that, like, oh, you got to try to win some elections too. But along that note, so I want to jump into an area where I think there's overlap, and I would like to bring this up now and continue this with the panel too, because I think where the Democratic Party has traditionally been very good, it's on criminal justice reform. And I think over history, it's not, you're not an anti-cop party. We're probably more of an anti-cop, is anti-police union and anti-police non-accountability. But the Democrats traditionally were known as like, you fight for the little guy. And that's where like the labor union stuff comes from. That's where some of the free speech and civil rights stuff comes from. But then I'm looking, and so I don't know if you're familiar with the situation with Josh Aurora and Pastor Moses in Gastonia.
I vaguely, but not enough to comment on it.
So it's a big one we've been on, but there's and I looked it up before this, so I didn't forget her name, and I've forgotten again. I believe it is Jada Johnson. So let me run through him. Josh Aurora, assaulted by the police. There's a video of it when his WCNC requested to have the body cam footage released. Travis Page, who is a Josh Stein appointee, technically a Cooper, but I think Jada Johnson. Josh Stein appoints Travis Page DA for Gastonia. Travis Page goes in and argues against the release of the body camera footage, saying Joshua could not get a fair trial. So somehow in his mind, the video of what happened prevents a fair trial. They tased Joshua's service dog, then arrested him violently for the horrible crime of being a homeless veteran. He was sitting on the median. Somebody handed him $1 and they went after him. And they went when he, I mean, you got to watch it is to be like, viewer warning, discretion advised, explicit content. It is hard to watch. They put him in jail. He's there for 3 days. The cops didn't follow protocol. They gave his dog to somebody else, his service dog. His dog got away. She runs back to the spot where the incident happened, which is what she was trained to do. And she got hit by a car doing it and was killed. When he gets out of jail, rather, he releases a video that's like, all I want is my dog Sunshine back. Please, please, please. When he found out Sunshine had been killed, he attempted to take his own life. Now he's come a long way, but this is a human being whose brain was broken fighting for our cause in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And here we are just throwing this person away like trash. Or look at Jada Johnson, shot 17 times in the back. So when she was 14, I believe, she reported a rape. The police did nothing about it. She was harassed by the accused raper for the next 6 years. Cops would never do anything. She had a kid. She'd never really appeared to overcome that. I mean, I PTSD to the max. Like, that's a situation where someone's going to be mentally, psychologically put upon.
Yeah.
Her parents called the cops because she was having a psychotic break. To be fair, she came out with a gun, but she surrendered the gun and was down on the floor, and the cop shot her in the back 17 times. She was killed in front of her 2-year-old. She's 22 years old. They won't release the body camera footage. Monica Ussery, I believe is her last name, was protesting the vaccine mandates in Raleigh in 2021. They wouldn't release the body cam footage for her arrest. Finally comes out. Someone put it out. It wasn't her. And there's actually some sort of like who leaked this. But the cops gathered a rally and they were basically like, yeah, we don't like her. We're going to take her down. And here's what we're going to charge her with. Mm-hmm. There was the person in Cherokee who they sent the robot in, and it blew. There was an explosion. He came to the door with a flashlight. They shot him. And they were lying about that. And you can watch this. They come in and they're laughing. They're happy about it. And then they're like, oh, he's got surveillance.
Yeah, I like to not to cut you off, but
no, I was waiting for you to jump in. I was just
sorry. I was waiting for you. I was like, I know you can keep going on this because that's the problem. It happens. Like I support the police. I support, what they do, but like qualified immunity, civil forfeiture, stuff like that. We know, like, I know you're probably completely against civil forfeiture as well, since that's like if
every bit of it.
But yeah, it doesn't matter who you are, and I feel that if you are a person in power, especially the police, and what you are doing is robbing somebody else's constitutional right to do something, you should be held accountable, and not only held accountable, but held to a higher standard of accountability, because that's your job. Your job is to make sure that these rights are enforced and protected. And if you break those, there should be heavier, accountability on that. And I realize, not all police do this. I know plenty of people in the police department who are, they feel the same way as me. They hate that there are these other officers that do these things. But the problem is we aren't doing anything about it, really, because the only time that we ever really hear about it is when it becomes a national spotlight for something. But all the other times, it just goes unpunished. And the problem with that is, my version of try to fix that is more regulation on the party. I assume yours would be probably, I'm not entirely sure what yours would be on.
Yeah, I can answer that. So there are some libertarians who would just get rid of the police. They want private police. That's not me. Yeah. I don't believe in private police or private prisons because I think that you're incentivizing the wrong things. Mm-hmm. I would first of all, believe it or not, I would pay cops more and I would have better benefits because I want to bring better people in. And then I would eliminate all qualified immunity. I want to propose a constitutional amendment, actually, that the government cannot indemnify or provide immunity for any entity whatsoever, public or private. So vaccine manufacturers, polluters, cops, other politicians, judges, everyone should be liable for their actions. But unqualified immunity, civilian review boards, body camera footage, and mandatory emotional and psychological check-ins like 4 times a year.
Right, we can agree on a lot of that. Like one of the things I never understood is like, okay, we have body cameras, they're going to be on. We're going to make sure that you know, everything that we do is recorded, but you can never look at it. Well, then why have the body cameras to begin with? If you're going to have the cameras, which you should, make sure that it is easily accessible. Make sure that it remains on, and you can't just turn it off and then turn it back on after you've done something. Say, well, I don't know how that happened. But yeah, the you know, paying them more. That's actually something that I was thinking as well. Is that if you remove that incentive to do the things that would make them extra money, such as, you know, like civil forfeiture, stuff like that, by paying them better, then, you know, it kind of removes the point behind it. But also, you know, I just feel that, you know, police who do their job properly do need to be paid better, because they are in a very it's a dangerous profession, but
it's a tough job.
Yeah, it's not a job that I personally would not want to do, would not want to be a police officer, just because not only the dangerous aspect of it, but also the responsibility of you. Like, you have the power to completely ruin a person's life, even if you do it accidentally, because you end up, you know, misunderstanding a constitutional right or something, and you could cause something to precipitate so that person ends up getting killed, and that's not something that I would want to do. So if people were incentivized to, you know, look, if you go into this profession, if you do it properly, you will be compensated appropriately for it. It would incentivize them to do it properly, but also it would take away that for the, you know, the more shady dealings. And I feel that would help the situation as well.
I'm with you there. My least libertarian position is not just paying cops more, but I think they should get 4 weeks, not just paid vacation, but if it's in state, we should pay for their vacations. I think they need reset. I think we forget that cops see kids getting shot and abused, and just really other like you're taking someone who is already of a particular psychological makeup who wants to be a police officer, and then is submitting that person to the most extreme occurrences on our planet. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah,
go ahead.
If we get burnout, you know, in just regular jobs, how much more?
Yeah.
So yeah.
But so then bringing it back to like you being a Democrat.
You wouldn't believe it in some of the things I've said, but
no. I mean, I know your party stands for this, but so Mark Robinson is thin blue line. Like, he's a jackass. He wants the cops to go in and arrest gay people for being gay in their homes. I got very, very few good things to say about him. I have respect for his origin story, if you will. Like, he came up, all right, respect for that. But
yeah,
he's as authoritarian as they come in my mind. But Josh Stein, supposed to be from the party of like the little guy in civil rights, and he's back in these AGs that are back in the blue no matter what. Not when they're wrong, not when they're right, but no matter what. So I'm assuming right now, if someone said, who should I vote for, you would say Josh Stein?
It's like lesser of two evils.
But that's like, I'm not down to vote for evil.
Yeah, it's that goes back to the thing that we were talking about earlier, and it's going to make me sound slightly hypocritical on this point.
I don't think you're a hypocrite. For the record, again, I would be going after you much harder. I think you're wrestling with things, and I respect that.
Well, I understand the hypocritical point of me saying that, you know, you shouldn't vote because D or vote because R, and then, you know, turning around and saying, okay, you need to vote for, you know, Josh Stein over Mark Robinson. And what I would like to is, when I say that, I would like to say, and here is why. So I would show the things that mainly are negative about Mark Robinson, because I've seen some of the things Josh Stein does. I think, what was it? Was it Josh Stein who it was North Carolina. They were trying to pass a thing where people couldn't lie in campaign ads or something like that. I can't remember. I think he voted against that.
See,
or tried to stop it.
I would not support that at all, because then who determines what a lie is?
Yeah, so I can't remember. There was something he did that I was like, I cannot support this from you, but I cannot remember what it was. It happened a couple months ago. And of course, the thing that I'm like, I can't support you for this. I cannot remember exactly what it was.
No,
I
that's
need
fair.
to
That's
fix
fair.
that. But
And if
so,
you send
yeah.
it to me after, I'll cut a quick clip here and I'll put it up on the screen for people watching.
All right, I will try to find that instead of trying to find it while I'm talking.
Well, so let's jump into something. Criminal justice reform. I still disagree with you on the Josh Stein part, but we agree on what should be done, like 95%. So let's get to somewhere I don't think we're going to agree.
Ooh.
And this will be, if that's cool, the last thing, and then bring the panel on. So I want to talk COVID because you're really into it. So am I. I will tell you this. This isn't like, oh, I did my own research. So I don't pretend to be a medical professional, but I have a financial and risk background. I know statistics better than many, many, many people on this planet. I have read probably 300 scientific studies, give or take, end to end, and probably another 1,000, like the abstract, the methodology, and the conclusions. And my position is that COVID really wasn't particularly serious. The vaccines did more harm than good, although I'm not this anti-vaxxer that like, oh, they're killing everyone. I think the risk profile of the vaccine is higher than the risk profile of COVID, particularly for people under 70. I think the lockdowns probably led to more deaths. I think masks were a useless joke and a bunch of virtue signaling. And I think that it was, I'm not a conspiracy theorist on this. I don't think it was a planned test to take over the country, but I do think that people with authoritarian tendencies, like authoritarian, gonna authoritarian. And I think you saw that from the Republicans and the Democrats.
All right. Can't say as I agree with you on some of
No,
that,
I know. And that's,
but
I feel like we've established we're both doing this in good faith. So let's talk about something that we disagree.
My background's in geography. So the mapping, the spread of things. So, and of course, when it comes to viruses and being able to spread, you can graph that, which I really wish that I still had the technology I had back in college, all the data and the computers that they had. So what are your biggest, your top one or two biggest issues with it? I'll see if I can try to.
Oh my God, where to start? the COVID vaccine, the first iteration of it was probably effective. The statistics would suggest it was effective in preventing both the spread and the infection of the initial 1 or 2 iterations of COVID for maybe 3 months. After that, the vaccines of the original vaccines or the boosters have done nothing, and I mean statistically nothing, to mitigate the spread of COVID, to mitigate the severity of infection. Meanwhile, there is clear correlation between people under 30 being vaccinated and heart-related death, severe strokes, aneurysms, myocarditis, heart attacks. There's a 30% increase in all-cause mortality, even adjusted for COVID, in Canada and the UK. The United States will not release the numbers.
When it comes, so I'm pro-vaccine. I'm pro for the getting people vaccinated. Of course, part of the reason that the initial wave, the efficacy may have waned is because there were not enough people who had become vaccinated at that point, allowing the virus to evolve and get breakthrough infections. I cannot say that for sure. I got to
jump in and ask you
how it works.
How do you back that up though?
That's what I'm saying. I cannot.
Oh, okay.
I cannot provide, because that's kind of it's a difficult thing to prove after the fact without having all the proper data, which we admittedly we probably don't have the proper data on that. But just based on how viruses tend to react to in a population. So the smaller the number of people in the population who gets a vaccine, the higher the odds that vaccine is going to be able to mutate and then have breakthrough infections on the people who that just tends to be how they work. I
don't know that I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, well,
I think the highest efficacy of vaccines is in populations that have not been infected yet. So
Sure.
the reason the MMR vaccine is really, really effective, because I'm not an anti-vaxxer. There are some, I'll tell you, the 3 vaccines that I don't think we should get: COVID vaccine, and I honestly don't think anyone should get it ever. I think it's dangerous. I don't think you should get the flu vaccine. I don't think it's dangerous. I just don't think it does anything. We're guessing, and it's like a 4% efficacy or something. And I'm real skeptical on the varicella vaccine, the chickenpox vaccine. And the reason is that chickenpox is not dangerous to children, but it's really dangerous to adults. And this vaccine has a 25-year efficacy. And so, like, are we setting a whole bunch of adults up for like severe shingles and chickenpox later on in life?
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm pro-vaccine.
Well, going to your comment about the increase in all-cause mortality. When it comes to that, I am perfectly okay with my background is in science. So I want to look at the scientific data for something. So I am completely for the COVID vaccine. However, if if we see these signs that the COVID vaccine is causing something, or that after the vaccine we saw an increase in X, I am perfectly okay with investigating that, figuring it out, seeing if there is that scientific link, and if there is a link, we need to fix that. We need to figure out, okay, why is this link? Why did it cause this? So while I am completely for the vaccine, if something comes out and we start to see these correlations, I am also completely for investigating the correlation to see if there actually is a causation there, or if it just happens to be that there was some other mitigating factor that caused it, and it just happened to be at the same time.
So I agree with that. And when you really start to study statistics, you realize how many other factors can play into things. One of the examples that I love, this was like 2007, I want to say. And I want to say it was in like Bolivia, but I'm going to get that country wrong. The same lottery numbers came up on 2 consecutive lotto drawings. And a lot of people freaked out, like, oh, this is clear evidence of fraud. But statisticians were like, actually, we're surprised this didn't happen earlier. There have been millions of lotteries going on all over the world for a long time. While that happening in any specific occasion is incredibly unlikely, when you look at like the laws of very big numbers, anything that can happen will happen.
Yeah, that I have to try to explain that to so many people as well. It's like, but it's a small chance of it happening.
Yeah,
that has
that means it's
no
gonna
bearing
happen.
on if it can happen or not. Give it a long enough time, it's going to happen. It could happen
will.
the very next time. It could happen in 100 years, but it will happen at some point.
But so we're looking at, so here, I'm going to run through a quick list.
All right.
I keep a list of 25-year-old or younger who have died from heart disease publicly. So we got, I'm sorry, 40 or younger. The Polaris guitarist, Ryan Mallett. The sheriffs are coming out and say it wasn't a rip current, that he apparently had an incident that caused him to drown, the ex-Patriots quarterback. Meditation guru Tim Brown, Robert De Niro's grandson, Joe Linder, the bodybuilding influencer, Darius Campbell, Danish, undiagnosed heart condition, Damon Reese, super sport racer, Finnish literary star Miki Lukonen. And I honestly have 300 here. I'm not going to run through all of them, but these are people under the age of 40 dying of heart disease that they're being, oh, it's undiagnosed heart disease.
Well, like I said, I'm completely for investigating that to figure out why it was. Of course, you would have to take in, look at their diet, their exercise regime, if they were taking anything, the percentage of those who had the vaccine, who didn't have the vaccine, the time, the distance between having it and whatnot. So I mean, but it could be done, and I'm perfectly okay with actually looking into that.
We're not allowed to do it. Like anything that says the vaccine might not work, it's banned on social media. The FBI is shutting it down.
Yeah, I understand the part of me that's like, okay, we need to, if there's something that we can show is disinformation, we need to try to stop it. However, then determines, okay, how do you determine if it is disinformation? But the scientist in me is like, but if we see this, we need to figure out why it is. We can't. And if it is a potential, like if one of the variables is potentially the COVID vaccine, we should not try to cover that up and say, okay, let's look at everything else before that. We need to be open with the fact that, okay, there's this chance that this is it, that this is one of the variables. We're going to test it and see if it is. We shouldn't say, okay, because it is this, because it is X, we're not going to worry about it yet. We're going to look at everything else, and anyone who says it might be X, we're not going to let you say that.
I mean,
I don't think we should do that.
Not to get nerdy statistician here, but you'll appreciate it. We could collect everyone who has died under 40 of a heart condition that we know of in the Western world and plug in 100 factors and run a regression analysis.
Oh, I hate those things so much. They're so useful, but I hate them so much.
But I would bet my house that COVID comes up as the factor that correlates with the vast majority. And it's not, I'm not anti-mRNA technology. I think it's going to revolutionize health. I think it's going to disease. It's just crazy to me that, yes, it's been around for 20, 25 years, but testing in humans was like 6 months. And then Pfizer, who happened to give $300 million in advertising fees to MSNBC and $140 million to Fox News, and what I think it was $260 million to CNN, and who dropped $1 million into both Trump's and Biden's nomination, or if they had won, Pfizer was going to put $1 million toward their nomination, or their what is it in the White House when they come into office? The party, the stupid thing. I hate every president. I hate every president we've had builds on the failures of the last one. It's every president we've had is the worst president.
Well, just to put this out there, I'm a Democrat, and I am not the greatest fan of Biden. But I'm not the greatest fan of Biden, probably because of different reasons than you. Because mine is he hasn't gone far enough in certain things, or he's had a campaign promise that he didn't do. So, I will criticize, although my criticizing might be, you're not doing enough.
Can I actually, if it's okay, can I stop you right there? That's a perfect segue. If you're cool, I'm going to run some Libertarian advertisements in a moment. And then if you don't mind hanging around, bring in the panel and let's continue the discussion. Because I want to hear where you don't think Biden went far enough.
All right.
So thank you, everyone. All the advertisements you just saw, you should definitely go buy from all of the libertarians who are selling stuff in North Carolina and everyone more. But I'm stoked we are back with our panel. 3 very interesting people. I mean, my standards may not be high, but here we are. So first of all, of course, you heard his full interview last week and earlier today, our chair, Libertarian Party of North Carolina, Ryan Brown. How you doing today, Ryan?
Doing well. What are you drinking? I got some
I
Blue
was about
Moon.
to say, our tradition, I'm drinking Willet Pot tonight.
There you go. Excellent.
Cheers
To rebellion.
freedom and rebellion.
Raise a glass to freedom, something they can never take away.
Then we have Lennin Caro. Lennin is here because he is a very good friend of mine. Don't hold that against him. He is also, I promised Erik coming on that I wanted to be balanced. And I was like, I'll get someone to the left. And I was like, who's the dumbest person I know to the left?
Dumbest person to say yes. Of
Yeah,
course, I'll
that's
come on your podcast.
So, Lennin, I got to ask you something. When we first really became good friends, roughly 2018, you took the political compass test and you came out as sort of top left corner, like authoritarian leftist.
Authoritarian-ish. Did I?
After hanging out for 3 years, you're still on the left, but you've become very libertarian on the compass. And so I want to know, is it because of my brilliant arguing or because my arguments are better than yours?
Well, when we started talking, I guess I became more interested in this question of like the organization of governments. And throughout the years, I engaged more with kind of syndicalist literature, or more of the kind of the left anarchists literature with David Graeber and things like that. And I still don't know how it would work out in real life, but I have a very romantic vision in which we'll all be these small cooperatives voting on who gets to pay what, who's going to do what task, a complete new, pure democracy. Of course, it's a pure fantasy in my head, but right now that's the kind of world I want to go towards, in which we have this increased democratization of if I can be, a bit of a Marxist, of the means of production.
You can. We won't judge you loudly. No, I love that. You're becoming a libertarian. I'm enjoying watching your transformation. It's like a caterpillar, a really caterpillar turning into a butterfly. And I apologize for everyone watching. Lennin really is one of my best friends, so I'm giving him more of a hard time than normal. And then last but most, deliberately saved to the end, Maya MJ Hall, co-chair of the Forward Party, radical activist, also, I think, a libertarian in the making, but I won't tell anyone. You heard our conversation earlier with Ryan just talking about running a party, but now we're jumping into issues. So before we go back to Erik and talk about where he would like to see Biden do some more, MJ, what's the biggest issue for you right now?
The biggest issue for me would probably be, I would say, the extreme takeover of, like polarity in media, it being enforced in media, and that impacting the way that our local laws are made. That's a huge deal for me. I think that on a local level, we need to make it more people-based. And, I think there are a lot of issues that we agree on fundamentally as a people, and no matter what political party you are. And I think that if we focus on political issues that are on the local level, that'll be important. But right now, the focus is on extremism. And that's a huge deal to me, just getting past that to even start making change. And, of course, the way to get there is electoral reform and, focusing on fixing the environment and actually fixing policies. But, I think getting extremism out the way is important. So
that's thank you for the lob over the plate, because that is a beautiful segue, because you all know Ryan and I don't think you can fix policies. You can just get government out of it. But Erik, coming back to you. So you ended saying your disappointment with Biden is that he has not gone far enough on certain things. I'm very interested to hear where you think he hasn't gone far enough, other than like stumbling up the stairs. And for the record, I will mock Biden relentlessly. I will mock Trump relentlessly. This is a non-partisan mockery of.
You're good. Equal opportunity mocking.
Exactly.
Well, a couple things. One was not codifying abortion rights. I'm a pro-choice. So the fact that it was allowed to get to the Supreme Court, and I personally view this current Supreme Court as not doing their job properly when it comes to the spirit of their actual job. But that's an entirely other conversation. So, that getting switched back to the states, and nothing's really been done about it. And of course, I know from my view, we would need more regulations, or we need to codify it as a proper right. And the other big thing was the student debt relief. The routes that were taken, the amount, as it stood before, it was shot down. It was like, okay, we can accept this. But it needed to be more. But it needs to be more than just student debt. It needs to be we need to go back through the system and fix the reason why we have this debt to begin with, so that it's not just the people currently are good, and then after that, I guess we'll just build it back up again. So I think that he needs to go further on that to actually rein in the special interests, get our rights back for even just rights to bankruptcy properly, stuff like that.
That's an interesting one. Ryan, real quick, fair trade-off. We eliminate all current student debt, and we also eliminate the ability for the federal government to loan students money ever in the future. You good with that trade-off?
Maybe.
I mean, I'd make it. Like,
Probably would. I'd abolish the Department of Education and the student loan.
and that's an
what
important
tip
part
it.
too.
That's what would tip it for me.
Okay.
Eric, I do want to keep going with where you think Biden hasn't gone far enough, but I gotta ask Lennon, because you and I went back and forth on student loans. Are you in agreement with Eric on this one?
Well, I mean, a lot of people argue that it was the subsidized loans or the Pell Grants that inflated college costs, right? I'm really concerned though with like if you cut that aid, if you cut those safety nets for the working class, how are they going to access? I mean, we still believe that the one way to social mobility is through education. So that's my biggest concern. I feel like we're going to be cutting the working class off and cutting down opportunities for social mobility.
But who believes?
No, I would say I would not be cool with making that trade. I think there needs to be continued aid for now.
So who requires this social mobility? Yeah, jump in. This is.
Oh, I was just saying, I second that. I second that opinion.
So, for example, I have worked very hard to get where I am, and I'm doing okay. I'm not rich. I'm doing okay. At least two of you on this have been to my house. What you're saying is that the government should be able to take some of my money to fund somebody going to Harvard to get a gender studies degree that's going to pay $12,000 a year because that's social mobility.
Yeah. That's redistribution, baby.
All right, fair enough. You're honest.
I mean, and this is the other issue. We're connecting getting a college degree. In my opinion, what used to be the picture of getting a college degree? It used to be about making a well-rounded citizen. But now it's we see it with ideologically. Remember when Trump wanted to merge the Department of Education with the Department of Labor? He proposed that. We're connecting higher education with purely getting a job, which to me is a bit problematic. I mean, I teach at a local university here, and I have very romantic vision still about what education is about.
Here you go, Rob. I got something here for you.
Yeah, run with it.
During that previous discussion, we were talking about bankruptcy, allowing students to go to bankruptcy court for their loans so they can clear it out if they can't afford it, right? If you look at the purpose of bankruptcy, it's to take a business who's not striving, liquidate their assets and pay off the people who, whatever. So you recycle a bad business and you hopefully get good out of it, right? I mean, if we get rid of the government funding for education and colleges and whatnot, you're going to have a bunch of these colleges go bankrupt. And personally, that's fine with me because these have only been able to survive on government money. So you recycle them, you take the assets out of them, you take the buildings, you start up a new college that's, new, innovative, whatever it is. You might have a better outcome than you had in the first place. So there you go.
Let me run with that for a second. I love that because we agree on this. But MJ, you are probably more aligned with Lennon and Eric in that you believe the government can still do some good.
Yeah, I
we're
definitely
working on you too. It's. But
well,
let me ask you this specifically.
I think that goes back to incentives, and when it comes to student loan forgiveness, I know 2 Democrats voted no, and that really surprised me. I was like, "What do you?" That
just means that they had donors that were against it.
Yes, and one of the arguments with one person, I forgot her name. I really forgot who she was, but when I looked at her reason, she said that as long as trade schools would be left out of this student loan forgiveness, she would not pass it. She wouldn't support it.
I can respect that.
Yeah, but I understand, but it's like, so just because the people you want can't get it, nobody should get it. You're not getting what you want either. Eventually that could be written in for people in trade schools, but you can't, nobody's getting it, and the problem isn't the fact that the gender studies degree you were referencing is what you deem, it made it seem like it's worthless, but the problem is that degree would only make about $12,000 a year.
Yeah, exactly.
People aren't making livable wages.
Yes. So to be fair, I picked that one because Lennon and I have actually gone back on that specific one before. Like this is a long conversation, but
I love gender studies. I mean, it's a great degree. It's a great.
He
I
likes
love the
Judith Butler.
classes.
I would
Yes.
argue with that.
I
Again,
only
it's a work
like
in
it
progress.
because I was introduced to Toni Morrison in that class. It
Yeah,
was
but
women.
she's talented.
Yeah.
I would
And that
never.
was my
think of her
first
as
time hearing
Judith
about it.
Butler. I'm
So
not
was
going to insult
Butler.
Toni Morrison that way. But so you say, like, you mentioned trade schools, and it's like, from a libertarian perspective, if this money was going to people who were in trade schools, like, we wouldn't be happy about it, but we'd be a lot less angry about it. But instead, you have people getting loans forgiven at Harvard, where they're paying $250,000 to get this gender studies degree, and they have a $60 billion endowment. Or my favorite, Yale, right? The most leftist school possibly in the country, named after Elihu Yale, who, and I'm not making this up one bit, made his money from which he funded Yale, the seed money for Yale, not in the slave trade, but by actually capturing people who became slaves. Look up Elihu Yale. He was in India, and he would go to Africa, and he would capture people. He was known, again, not making this up, for the glee that he felt when he would separate children from their parents. But Yale wants to cancel people for saying like men shouldn't be in women's sports. And my money is going to that to erase the student loan debt. Can you at least see where I don't love that?
Well, yeah, because I benefited from the Pell Grant. I mean, at that time, my parents didn't make a lot of money. So I qualified for it, gave me an opportunity to go to school. But I can see why there are people who benefit from it and people who don't directly benefit from it. So yeah, I can believe, but that's one of the downfalls of living in a society. There's going to be some form of redistribution in some way.
So that's actually a bigger topic. And Eric, let me ask you this.
Mhm.
What Lennon and I often argue is from a midpoint of neoliberalism, and he goes to the far left and I go to the far non-authoritarian. What is your feeling just broadly on capitalism?
On capitalism? Ooh. Just throwing me in the deep end there. No,
I mean, there are millions of books, tons of
When-
discussion. We're not going to solve this problem right now, but I'm curious. Like, I'm not asking this ain't a gotcha. I'm really interested.
Like capitalism, free market, stuff like that. I personally feel that it's really great for starting an economy up, but it tends to peter out after it's been established and it starts creating the massive inequalities. So like my view is capitalism, free market, okay, but we need some regulations on it. So not just unfettered free market and unfettered capitalism, but so that it's tailored, so that there are regulations put in to limit the like monopolistic tendencies, or to try to fix the wage inequality, and like we're talking about wage distribution, and a lot of people see it as, if we try to make it so that the rich pay more, so that the poor and the middle class can have more, that's redistributing wealth. And to that I say, well, how is the rich gaining all that money off of the work of the poor, not wealth redistribution to begin with, and we're just trying to fix that. So I'm for free market, I'm for capitalism, but I'm also for the more social, I don't want to say socialism, but the more socialistic tendencies, the more the regulation on it. If that answers the question.
No, so Ryan, how is the rich benefiting from the work of the poor or the labor class, as Lennon would definitely call them, how is that not wealth redistribution?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna ignore your question, go back to the other one. When it comes, I mean, democracy was mentioned earlier in this, right? Democratization. The free market is the greatest form of democracy that you have, because when it comes to voting with your vote, you vote for a politician who's going to choose the regulation to support the guy that they want to have supported, right? But when you're voting with dollars, you get a lot more votes, and you get a lot more. You can distribute your votes how you want to. You can vote for the things you want to see. And here you go. I'll tie it back to your real question that you asked me. If I vote to give 1,000 of my votes or 1,000 of my dollars to Google or Apple to buy a phone, and Google and Apple end up with, $10 billion of revenue that year, it wasn't because they exploited me. It's because they built a product that I wanted, right? So I think there is some miscommunication and misunderstanding when it comes to, a livable wage, and, when it comes to whether or not people are exploiting and the work and labor of someone else, when you have the regulation actually causing that disparity, right? Like, there are price caps, price floors on labor and wages. There's regulations that put people out of business, that put people out of employment, and then they end up with negative, effects. I think, I'm sort of over the belief that if you have no government regulation, you're going to get the best free market. And if you have any sort of government regulation, you're just going to end up with a big government anyways, and a broken system where it picks winners and losers. So there you go. Didn't answer your direct question, but it sort of answered two of them.
It's a good one. So Lennon, I saw you shaking your head, but I want to bring MJ in first. What do you think of what Ryan said? Is there an acceptable level of government intervention?
Yes, I can definitely agree with that. I think the role of the government in terms of the market should be as a referee and not a player, as Elon Musk puts it. I know you don't particularly love that guy, but
I like Elon. I don't love him. I like him. I
Yeah.
don't believe in heroes or deities or whatever. But
Yeah.
hey,
and I
he's better
struggle
than
with this a
George
lot.
Soros.
Yeah, exactly. But I struggle with this a lot because I have this same idea that, formulas can be racist and variables can be racist because, there can be prejudice in algorithms, so you can have a perfect system, but not realize that the prejudice until, after you evaluate them. So there's always going to be exploitation in the market, maybe not like Ryan was saying here, but in other countries where products are being made, or, in order to get that kind of money, some exploitation has to go on. You can't make billions of dollars without exploitation. That's not possible. That's in my opinion.
But I don't agree, but I want to hear Lennon's take on that.
I want to just directly address the idea that it's an interesting idea that free market systems is a perfect form of democratization, because you're replacing in a more traditional democracy, each person has a vote. In a free market, I guess, version of this democracy, your dollars are your vote. The issue is we have the weight of history upon us, if I can use a quote from Marx, in which we have this unequal distribution of money/votes in our current society, which will lead to power being accumulated to the hands of a few versus, the rest of the masses. So I just wanted to address that.
The power of the few, like the Bushes and the Clintons and the Trumps.
And the Elon Musks, yeah.
And the Elon Musks and the Mark Zuckerbergs and everyone else, yeah. But they've got regulation. They've got government calling balls and strikes, being the referee, making sure the little guy doesn't get screwed by regulating the market, and they're sitting there with $70 billion. So I don't know. It didn't seem like it evened out the playing field that much.
Well, actually, can I ask a quick question to the Libertarians?
Eric just got real excited. I got to hear what you got to say.
Well, I was going to say this, the same thing. If you're voting with your money, but you don't have money, you can't really vote in that sense. But when it comes to the rich, tax the rich, make them pay their fair share.
But isn't that punishing success?
How much of someone else's money is your fair share?
Yeah, exactly. I will tell you this: in the last 3 years, I've given the government over $500,000. My kid's college fund is not fully funded because Joe Biden wants to have TikTok stars promote a vaccine that I don't believe in. How is that
Well, I think that taxes should be lowered on people who aren't, objectively rich, but increased on those who are objectively rich. And
But what
my
is objectively
reasoning,
rich?
well, making more than $1 million per year.
But even
Um,
there, so the reason that my taxes were so high is because my wife has 2 of her own businesses. So we're hit with that like own your own business tax. So her revenue gets taxed, not like I'm taxed on money that I never see. And my property taxes just went up 65% so that some idiot billionaire can build a tennis court or something in Charlotte. I mean, it's crazy. When you open these floodgates, the flood comes through.
well, the mismanagement of tax funds, like I'm with you kind of on that point where we need to fix how the taxes that we generate. We need to make sure those are used properly, and of course, then what counts as properly. I understand that argument, but as as we're saying earlier, making billions, getting to that point and not having got there because you exploited something is, I'm not going to say it is statistically impossible, but since you can't technically get statistically impossible, but the odds are so astronomically low that it is a better indicator that the person exploited to get there than not. And in that case, taxing them is, in a sense, kind of a way to help rectify that, because it takes some of that and gives it back to the people who were exploited to begin with. Like, that's kind of where I'm going with that.
So believe it or not, I agree 100% with the first part of your statement. And I want to see if Ryan agrees with me on this one. If we had a real free market, you would have few, if any, billionaires, but you'd have a whole lot more millionaires, because the free market is the most efficient way to distribute capital. And so it goes to more people. A rising tide lifts all boats. You all can argue history all you want, but capitalism has brought more people out of poverty than anything else in history by a million miles. And there's a reason. So I'll tell you this. I lived in China for a couple of years. The communism in China has brought equity for 1 billion people who live in poverty. I've been to cities of 10 million people where there's no running water. They use latrines for the bathroom. Meanwhile, it's like, oh, you're in poverty in the US, so you only have like slow Wi-Fi. And I'm overstating it. I don't want to downplay the plight of people who don't have as much. It's a difficult situation, and I'm in favor of helping out people who don't have as much. But I also think that when you bring the government into it, oh, sorry, I'm dropping my phone there. When you bring the government into it, then people they don't feel like there's a responsibility to do something about it. It's just like, oh, the government's taking care of it. I don't need to worry. I'm paying my taxes, but taxes are so arbitrary. And further, if our taxes really went to helping people, again, you would find libertarians sort of like, but we'd shut up and roll with it. But they don't at all. Like, Joe Biden spent something like $300,000 on getting TikTok influencers to promote the vaccine. And that vaccine generated $180 million for Anthony Fauci, I think was the number, because he held a patent on one aspect of it. So MJ, is that fair in any way, shape, or form?
That goes back to the capitalism not being perfect. It's crony capitalism. So as long as you can buy your way into politics, it's always going to be crooked. And I don't know. I feel like in the capitalist society, I was like, the way it's supposed to be ran, taxes would benefit people. But if you
how can we make that possible though? Lennin, MJ, and Erik, open this up, because Ryan and I are in 100% agreement. How can you
well, think about this. if I feel like if you can call up a politician and be like, yo, can you postpone that bill? Like, I got $1 billion coming. Can you just hold that off? You need to be paying more taxes than everybody. I don't care. You know, like, because not everyone has that level of access to politicians. So if you can do that right now, then you should be paying more taxes than everyone. You should be, to whom much is given, whom much is required. You know, so I can't call, you know, Joe Biden and be like, yo, you're delaying my flights. Can you just like push that vaccine like out the way? I need people to go back to work, you know, like just get it done.
Can you repeat the question, Rob?
Probably not. I've been drinking. No. It's the idea that people who have more have some higher degree of responsibility to society. And it's a collectivist approach. The way Ryan phrases it, and I love this phrase, it is consistent in a non-libertarian world. I disagree with it, but that is a consistent perspective in a non-libertarian world philosophically. But practically, to me, it's not in any way, shape, or form ever like, oh, you made more, we should tax you more. You punish people for being successful, then you allow them to manipulate the outcome. So they're funding the campaigns, they're picking politicians, they're choosing regulation that helps them. And further, believe me, as much as Elon pays in taxes, he's getting a whole lot of loopholes, credits, and write-offs that I'm not. Because the people with the money are really calling the shots. How could you possibly think that the government is in any way non-impotent, if you will, to affect positive change?
Rephrase it, please. The last part, non-impotent to not make or to make?
Yeah, in any way it's feasible that they can do good things.
Oh, okay. Can the government ever do good things is basically the question.
Over time, because
Consistent.
I can acknowledge that there are initiatives that start good.
Are there any policies that you think the government instated that resulted in good things? For example, maybe even the public education system. Would we have schools? No, think about this. It gets a bad rap now, but in the 1800s, that's when it got formed. You know, this idea, and like, we're going to make schools and we're going to make a compulsory
on the Prussian model to build good soldiers.
It was a whole idea about, you know, nation building, right? At least from what I remember in my high school history of like the public schools, how it enacted. And now you can look at it now, it's like, wow, public schools are you know, not good, or they're not as good as they can be. But would the US be a superpower? And I don't think it's that great that we're a superpower, or is it just that the United States is a superpower? But will we be in this position if not for investments by the government into their own population, like the public school system?
So if you want my opinion, I think that the US is a superpower for two reasons. One, we had real free market capitalism up until about World War II, give or take. I know the Fed started much earlier, but they weren't doing as much. And Ryan, you can jump in and correct me if you want, but it didn't kick in hardcore till roughly World War II. There was a lot of development in that period of time. And then after World War II, we were the only developed country that wasn't destroyed by the war. And we funded the entire world. And that's how we became a superpower.
And at the same time, during the progressive era, we decided that we would make good little school children to be the next, perfect human. It's the same sort of Marxist, the new Marxist person, how they've been reshaped and reformed and they're, good Marxist people. We decided we're going to take the good school child and we're going to make him into believe that the government is the best thing in the world. And he's going to grow to be our little work horse for the rest of eternity, right? And then you get to the 1940s, 1950s, the US decides that they're going to be the global reserve currency. They get to play funny money with everybody else in the world. They get to, that's how they got their superpower status, is by having control of the money after World War II. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of a little production factory of good humans out of the public school system to believe that the state's the good thing, and then they have control of the money, and that's how they become a superpower. They use that to build up their military and hurt everybody else.
So coming off the money thing, let me take this to like sort of the 35,000-foot view. Y'all see my shirt. Who here thinks that we should end the Federal Reserve?
Me. Yeah.
So
Outvoted
Eric,
on
why
our
is
own
the Federal
podcast.
Reserve good?
Why is the Federal Reserve good?
I'll even give you a net. I'll give you an out. How is the Federal Reserve a net positive over a net negative? It doesn't even have to be good. It just has to be less bad than the other thing.
And the other thing is nothing.
The other thing is no Fed or some other,
Yes.
know, some other system.
So it depends on how you look at it. The originally we had proper backing for our money, in which case, that's great because we can actually prove that we own whatever. When you go into the current economy where everything's fake money that doesn't exist, but they're bytes on a computer for what people have. That's whenever you start to get to the issues of it. We've gone past the intended point. So like, I don't know if that's kind of where you believe in some ways. In which case, if so, yes, I can understand that. But doing away with it, what replaces it
Nothing.
for
That
the
is
economic
beautiful.
engine?
My biggest fear is the Fed is an instrument. It's an institution that was created, or in recent usage, like I'm thinking back to Volcker back in 1980s. I mean, it's Reagan, under the Reagan administration. What did they do to the interest rates? They jacked them up to kind of control stagflation, right?
Which we're about to do now.
And we're seeing the rise in inflation. What are the tools? And I love the memes that come out of Wall Street Bets with Jerome Powell, and they're looking at the tools. They're trying to have a soft landing with them. They're trying to manipulate the kind of like the national market to try to control. And I can see how libertarians would see that as not jiving well with their ideology, because that's
We're
a total
smart.
abomination to the free market. But my biggest fear is if we do have runaway inflation, who's going to suffer the most? Which class of people is going to suffer the most? And will getting rid of the Fed really mean that we'll see the end of inflation if we peg it back to the gold, or peg it back? Because I don't know if there's any, let's say, any political will in the current two powers to peg it back to gold or to silver or bimetallism or whatever.
Well, gold can become tricky because things happen faster. But dude, you're spot on. Look, again, I'm not rich, but inflation is annoying to me. It's not changing my lifestyle. I've been to your house. You're going to be okay. Bread gets a little more expensive. Milk gets a little more expensive. You're going to be all right. The people with nothing, it ruins them. If gas goes up $1.50, a 12-gallon tank, we're talking what, $17.50, $16.50. I've been drinking a little bit. My math is not as fast. But that hurts if you're working in a server salary. And MJ, I see you nodding your head. Jump in.
Yeah, I'm just more worried about replacing it with nothing. I believe in checks and balances. And I feel like there's always going to be predators, and I'm worried that nothing, it doesn't account for predators.
Okay, so let me ask you on this. I have an apple tree.
Right.
I pick an apple. Ryan wants an apple. I say, Ryan, that's $1. I give him the apple. He gives me a silver dollar. Where does the government belong in that transaction?
Well, what if you decide you don't want $7 that day? And you just
Then
don't
I
want
would
to,
ask him for something else.
Yeah.
That's between us.
but you still have the apples. There's always going to be
But he could grow his own apples.
See, all right, let me jump in here. You mentioned checks and balances, all right?
Yes.
How on earth can the people balance and check the Fed or the Treasury? There's nothing they can do because they have only one legal tender currency that they can use, right? So, look, inflation's killing regular people, and it's going to kill the people on fixed incomes and who don't have enough money to start with. One of our guys in the party, he jokes, he goes, yeah, I didn't pay my taxes for 20 years, but I didn't have any money, so what are they going to do, take nothing? You know, so yeah, the people who are already being hurt by inflation would be hurt by, replacing the currency, ending the Fed, going to free market system of money. But at the same time, is once we have a stabilized, system that's free market based, again, I think it's sort of democratizing your money. I mean, it's democratizing your vote, yourself, your money. It is what it is. People can decide, hey, Rob, I'll give you $1 for that apple, or I'll give you, a magazine full of 9mm or whatever it is.
Well, I'd
Right?
be happy
And-
with that too.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
just
lot
think-
more than $1.
Well,
Sure.
how much harm is it going to cause when you rip the Band-Aid and you end the Fed?
Stabilizing means death. That means
Well,
death.
no, I mean, if you want to get deep into libertarian theory, you could take all the gold that we supposedly have in Fort Knox, change the new value to completely match our debt and pay off our debt or people who own our debt at that new money, and then go straight to the free floating currency based on gold. I mean, you could do that very simply, and every single person is going to get
It's called
screwed at the same
Bitcoin.
rate. I don't care if it's Bitcoin or not. See, this Rob talked about it a lot during the Eric
I'm not
segment
some
earlier.
Bitcoin stan either, but like
No.
the concept.
Right, but I mean, you talked about, during when the one-on-one with you and Eric, it was, I'm not a scientist, but I mean, I'm not this, that, and whatever. Look, I'm not a trained economist. I'm a computer science guy, so I can kind of think through this, right? But I don't have to point out exactly what the solution would be to understand that what we have now is a problem, and that the way we do it is by stop getting government in the way, getting in all these different places and all these different aspects of our lives. Eric
So,
had his hand up, so he can go to
we're
him.
coming
I
up
don't know
on
if we're still
time.
topic.
Eric,
Oh,
I'm going to ask you to hold because I want to
Okay.
give you the last word. Lennon and MJ, following up on what Ryan just said, everything that you are advocating for, why do we need government to do it?
I think that you need to have rules in place. You need some kind of,
But why rules govern it? Government, that's governance.
because there's always going to be somebody that you have to make rules for. There's going to be one person that's just like, he's a Damien, he's just terrorizing. You can't, you need to make rules for him. How do you deal with Damiens with no regulation?
I think the market will handle it, but okay. Lennon, why do you need
This-
government to do it?
The state is a very useful tool to make people do things. I
that's
mean, that's the truth. That's the truth.
problem.
If you want to rectify short-term inequality in the short term, I mean, pragmatically, you would use the vehicle of the state. In my opinion, that's just a more, you use the tools that are available to you. And then the dangerous part is, will they let go of the vehicle of the state? Will it let it wither away? And, a lot of, the story goes that the people in power will stay in power and the state will self-perpetuate itself.
Like the Soviet Union or the CCP
Yeah.
Ho Chi
But
Minh.
still, and the other thing is
or
like,
the US right now.
George Bush, Obama.
when it comes to this idea of government, there's a lot of phobia of government in the Libertarian Party. I mean, more so in the Republican side, but it's very much present in the Libertarian
Not
discussions.
small g government. We understand there are organized principles. It's ceding power to elected officials.
Well, to me, it becomes a question of scale. How big is too big? Which is a really, really interesting question, because like I said, I believe in local democracies, making decisions for their locality and things like that. However, we exist right now in an actuality where we have this kind of 3-tiered, 4-tiered system: federal, state, municipality, and then some, township and things like that. So thinking pragmatically, theory and philosophy is nice, but how do you do action right now? And, the two, and this is where, and we talked about principles before, but it's really hard to stay principled if you want to achieve changes now, because you're going to have to break some of your own rules if you want to get things done sooner than later, in my opinion.
So I want to take that and we will stretch it out into the next conversation. Erik, I do want to kick it to you, but beforehand, thank you all so much. This is episode 8. I think it's the best episode we've had. This was an awesome discussion. Erik, in particular, thank you so much. You jumped in on this on faith. I mean, you didn't know what you're coming up against. I cannot overstate how much I appreciate that. Great conversation. Anything you want to respond to? 2 minutes, just rock and roll.
Well, I mean, of course, I have to thank y'all for inviting me on. I know whenever I first said it on Twitter, it sounded really snarky. Like, I've never heard of, like, I didn't mean it that way. I mean, I legitimately just hadn't. So
It's Twitter. Be snarky.
But what, rewind just a little bit when we were talking about, switching away from the monetary unit that we have to some other unit. And personally, for most cases, I would rather have a single unit that has an approximate, it'll fluctuate due to inflation, value that we can all agree on, than one in which someone can just not accept it and say, I will only accept, like for the apples or whatever, I will only accept, birch tree wood. And if you don't have birch tree wood, I'm not going to allow you to have this. So it puts it on, it kind of equalizes it so that it doesn't equalize it completely, because of course, there's wage inequality and all, but that's kind of where I fell on that from a couple of minutes back. But yeah, I appreciate the good faith arguments, the fact that we can actually have a discussion. We may disagree, and we did disagree, but just because people disagree doesn't mean that we can't try to work together to figure out how to actually fix the problems that we see. Because there are things we agree on, but also there are things we disagree on. But I'm like, you know what? Let's see if we can still fix that, because maybe in helping you to fix that, we can figure out something that would, go both ways on that. So again, thank you very much.
Yeah. Don't worry about it, Erik. Twitter's not real life, so it's fine.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you all so much. So first of all, Ryan, any plugs, any announcements, anything Libertarians
Yes.
running for office you want to?
Wow, what a great segue. There are Libertarians running for office. We have some filed already, but filing is open. So if you are a Libertarian in the sound of my voice, or you're a person of another party you forgot, register if you're a Libertarian, don't if you're from the other party. So
Lennin, next. Not just one of my good friends, you represent or work for an organization doing amazing things. Quick plug.
Yeah, I'll plug in that Camino Research Institute, where I'm the lead community researcher. We're currently doing a statewide Latino state needs assessment. So this is ongoing. We have over 1,600 surveys trying to understand what Latinos need. So if you're interested in the results, I don't know if you can put in the YouTube thing, my email, they can contact me at lennin@camino.org.
And Lennin is being modest. Camino, there's no regard for some sort of arbitrary legal status. They're helping people who need help, who are looking for a better opportunity. And I've toured the facility. I've met the people. This is an organization that is living every libertarian principle there is. MJ, what do you want to plug?
I just want to plug NC Forward. We're trying to get on the ballot currently. We need about 13,500 signatures.
Let me jump in. Where do they go to sign?
Yes, you can go to NorthCarolinaForwardParty.com, or you can email NorthCarolinaForwardParty.com if you're curious about us and you're not sure who we are, what we stand for. You can check out our platform on our website and help us get on the ballot. If you want more options, if you think there should be more options, we really appreciate it. So.
And Erik, last of all, like you said, Erik had a snarky response about our podcast. And I was like, hey, you want to come on the podcast? And he apologized. And I was like, no, dude, it's Twitter. Like, we get it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I would love to get you back multiple times. What do you want to plug?
I don't really have much. I've got
What's
my
your Twitter? Just give your Twitter.
Eric Davis for NC1. One is in like the number, and it's ERIK because just have to really mess with people who try to find me.
So that being said, everyone listening, you should not vote for Republicans or Democrats, but if you must, you could do a hell of a lot worse than Eric. Thank you all so much. We had a debate last week between our governor candidates, and I still think this is our best podcast recording yet. I really appreciate it. I want to set this up again. Raise a glass to freedom. Cheers to rebellion. Thank you all. Have a wonderful night.
Thanks, Rob.
God save the
Thanks,
Queen.
Rob.
Man.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the sports part of the podcast. And of course, it's me, Dub Dub, and my partner over there. Well, actually, over there is Groove. I can't get used to this camera, but we're here to talk about what's going on in North Carolina sports. So, how you doing this afternoon?
I am doing well. Thanks,
All right.
Dub, and thanks for sticking around for the sports ball section of Liberty Inc.
Mm-hmm.
What are we
Thank
going to
y'all
talk
so
about
much.
today, Dub? What's on your mind?
Well, of course, again, we are in the summer of soccer, and boy, what a interesting summer it's become. We just got through the United States, lost to Panama on penalty kicks after drawing 1-1 with them in extra time.
I watched that game. That was a bummer, man.
Yeah. And the thing is, we as a nation, the United States, need to start taking the Gold Cup seriously. We treat it as a third-rate tournament.
Yeah.
This is no different than the Euros. The Euros is the championship of UEFA. The Copa America is the championship of CONMEBOL, which we were invited to for next year, by the way. So the USA will be part of it. It will be a 16-team tournament. And and it will actually be held in the United States, which is interesting. So
Did Mexico win? I did not.
Mexico did win. It is going to
Okay.
be Mexico versus Panama for the Gold Cup trophy.
Yeah, I missed that game. 'Cause
Yeah,
I turned it off after US lost. I was like, forget it.
And the thing is, Mexico scored in the second minute, and the route was on, and they ended up winning 3-0, and it was just
I did see him score one, and then that was all I caught from that game.
Yeah.
So that'd be interesting for sure. And how about the World Cup? The female.
Well, the women are getting ready. Everything's on go for them. They had a warm-up match. They defeated Wales 3-0, and everybody looked good. And, just bring it on. And also, Megan Rapinoe announced this is her last World Cup. She's going to retire from all international soccer after this one. She's not the only one. Looks like Marta of Brazil is going to also be her last one. Christine Sinclair of Canada, it will be her last one. She's been around a long time. She turns 40 this year. One of the few.
Oh, wow. Playing at 40 years old. That's amazing.
One of the few 40-year-olds still playing in the World Cup and playing for the national team. She's played for them for 24 years because she got called up as a 16-year-old.
Yeah, that is impressive. That is
and she also broke Abby Wambach's record. She has the most international goals of anyone in the women's game. So good respect for her, good respect for Canada. And also Charlotte FC.
Oh, how about that Charlotte FC? How was that last game, man? How do you feel about that? Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know you're probably a little bit upset.
Yeah, I could not believe that match last night. They looked lifeless.
Yeah.
They looked like they were discombobulated. They looked like they didn't know what they're doing. You see the shirt I'm wearing today. I'm wearing AFC Richmond today because they're the only team worth 2 cents on the men's side currently in my life. So, what are we doing here? It's just 5 draws, and in all those matches had leads. We didn't have a lead in this one, tried to do it the opposite way, come from 2-0 down, did not work. And just putting people out of position. He subs out Swiderski. What are we doing? Lattanzio just does not know what he's doing anymore. He's showing incompetence. He was happy at a 2-0 loss because we didn't lose 4 or 5-0, and that is bad mindset.
That's not the way to look at it.
This team is in a bad mindset. It's in a very bad way. The Cup tournament in the midseason is coming up, and this is a perfect time to let go of Lattanzio and just have an interim coach in there to sort of reset the team, treat this as sort of a second preseason going into the second half of the match, because we're about to fall out of the playoff race if we haven't already. And we just need some type of new messaging going on, because this messaging, this switching is just not working.
Right.
So that felt good.
Well, the fun fact is I just joined another indoor soccer team, and I play every Thursdays, and it's fun story. There's only pretty much one person on my team that speaks decent English. They're all Spanish speaking individuals.
Oh boy.
They're really, really, really good though. And it makes me a better player.
Yeah, absolutely. What position do you play?
I usually play striker, actually.
Really? Oh, you're a forward.
I usually play forward. I like shooting on the goal.
Do you have any goals?
Fun, not really being able to communicate with your team members other than on the soccer field. I love that. I love that.
Just the raise of the hand, the thumbs up.
Yeah. Make a bunch of noise,
thank you.
pass it to you.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. So every Thursday, I'm going to be playing indoor. And indoor is way different. There's no offsides. It's
right. It's just free for all. It's free for all football.
It really is.
And the thing is, you can play. You're playing in a gym, correct?
It's indoor. Yeah. I mean, it's not a gym. There's 2 fields inside of a building.
Oh, okay.
That's somewhat air conditioned, not really, but kind of.
Okay. Because I was thinking, if you're doing like indoor soccer, like on a gym floor, you can play it off the walls.
No, it's turf. Yeah, there's a wall. It's a wall. It's about the size of a hockey rink.
Okay.
Hockey field. So it's 5-on-5 with 2 goaltenders, and you can bounce it off the wall. As soon as it hits the net above the wall, that's considered out of bounds.
Right.
If it's the net above the field, that's also out of bounds, and you have 3 lines, and whatever line that it hits closest to is where you put the ball to kick it.
Right, for a goal kick. Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds like fun.
It is a lot of fun. I love soccer so much. It's my favorite sport. So anything else with MLB or MLS?
Well, I was going to go over to the NBA because the Charlotte Hornets just completed their summer session with the Summer League out west, and it was not good. They did not win a single game. In fact, in their last game, they started pretty auspiciously by only scoring 5 points in a quarter.
Yeah.
And I've been telling people, I've been telling people this. I said, that's pretty pathetic, even though these are rookies or people in the G League trying to make the team, or just, undrafted free agents trying to make the team. This is pathetic. This is NBA ball somewhat, and you're supposed to be able to score more than 5 points in a quarter. There are mighty mites out there that can score more than 5 points in a quarter, but granted, they're shooting on 7-foot goals, but still, you got to
I think you could score 5 points in a game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just pathetic. And but that's the state right now, and there's a trend on Twitter. It's especially now starting to infect the soccer team, and I hate what's going on, but people are starting to go Charlotte being Charlotte. And I'm like,
is it called the Charlotte curse?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
you get one flash of greatness, and then everything goes to pot. And
Hey, man. Hopefully it doesn't spread throughout the state.
no, I hope not either. But somebody the other day was talking about, never forget, Bruton Smith started this, and I had to quickly remind them. I said, believe it or not, the Steve Malik 919 to MLS was better suited. His proposal was better suited than what Bruton Smith ever was going to do. So I said, Bruton Smith and just Tepper outshone everybody because he had the money, which those other two guys didn't have. So let's be honest with ourselves. So, but anyway, back to the crux of the matter. And finally, we have the Carolina Panthers. They're going to get ready for their training camp here at the end of the month. As we already know, Bryce Young has been penciled into number 1, and Andy Dalton will be his backup. But the question for me is, what are they going to do with Matt Corral? He's the third string quarterback. Are they going to keep him now that the third string quarterback is now a rule in the National Football League? You can have an emergency third quarterback, which I think they should. And, it could be a boon for that. But, I am just concerned that nobody's taking the Panthers seriously. A lot of pundits have them third place. A lot of them don't seem to give them much of a chance. A lot of people just think the Saints are just going to run away with the division with Derek Carr. I said, do y'all realize that it's still Derek Carr? He didn't do anything with good receivers out in Las Vegas. What makes you think he's going to do any good in New Orleans? So I think the Panthers have a fighting chance to win it. And I'm going to tell you what. I think it was DraftKings that had the Panthers at plus 8,000 to win the Super Bowl, and at like plus 400 for them to win the division. And you know what? It's worth it to plonk down a tenner on both of those, just as a flyer, just to see if you can make any decent money. Because on plus 8,000, you realize what the return on that is?
Yeah.
If they actually do go all the way and make the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I could see them winning.
Even just winning the division. I mean, that's a nice little hunk of change.
Like I said at the beginning of when we started doing this podcast, I'll give them 8 or 9 wins, which could be enough to win the division. I said from the beginning, we're still in rebuilding mode. I feel like we're almost there to being rebuilt. Bryce Young is going to help. That dude is really, really good. I'm a big fan. And we are 53 days away from kickoff for the first game, which will be September 7th. Kansas City and Lions will be the first game of the season.
Opening Thursday, yep.
Yeah, so we are 53 days away, and I'm excited. We're going to have to get together and watch some games. Yes. You down for that?
I would be down for that. I just got to find out where you live, or you come up to where I live.
Well, I live near Raleigh, and you live out in the country somewhere. So
yes, I do. But I got good internet now, so woo.
Yeah, we can go somewhere. We'll find somewhere to watch that. Maybe that opening game or the first Panthers game. That might be even better.
Yeah, so that would be, and we can sort of set up a live watch, and
that'd be nice. Let's do it.
And then get our natural reactions to things and see what could happen. So,
well, they could surprise me and surprise us and do better than
absolutely
I had predicted, but I'll give them 8, 9 wins. I think that's a fair assessment for where they're at. If they get 12, I mean, they could really shock the entire league. And they could go all the way if they're winning like that. They could do it, but I have my doubts. I'll be cheering for them, but I'll give them about 8 or 9. That's what I'll personally give them. How do
That's
you feel?
absolutely
How
fair.
many wins would you give them?
I say the same. I'm going to go one more than you. I'm going to say 9 or 10.
9 or 10. Okay.
Because
All right,
I
I
think
hope
they'll
you're
do
right.
really well. They'll do really well in the division. I think
Okay.
they'll go 4-2 because I think they sweep Tampa and then win
You
their
think so? Really?
and then they win their games at home versus Atlanta and New Orleans. You know, going to Atlanta and going to New Orleans or whatever, you know, those are always 50-50 games.
Mhm.
And then of course you have to win 6 of your other 11 games. They have the Texans on the schedule. They have Indianapolis on the schedule. Those two, of course, will match up Bryce Young with his compatriots in the draft, you know, with CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson. And, you know, they play all the North teams this year. They play those Lions. They play Green Bay. They play Minnesota. And
Good.
so, but we'll get to see Jordan Love to see if he's any good, if he's the heir apparent up there, if, you know, if the Lions are truly any good. You know, they've lost 3 people to gambling shenanigans up there. So I don't know how much momentum they'll have from last year to really do good. And then, of course, Minnesota is always Minnesota. They have Kirk Cousins, and
We struggle against Minnesota. I don't know why, but we always
I
do.
don't get that either. But see what happens. I'm actually optimistic about this season. I haven't been optimistic for the last couple seasons, but this one I actually feel somewhat decent about. I mean, I even told people, I said, even if we only get 3 wins, but I know we are actually building something, I'll even take that.
I think we'll do better than 3.
I know, but you know, I've just got to see this as it's a new era and just a fresh start for everything. So
yeah, I think we're almost rebuilt. Let's see how this season goes. They'll make some adjustments, make some tweaks. I feel good about the Panthers.
Right. And one more thing, sources have said that Brian Burns has been offered a contract extension.
Okay.
So we'll see where that goes. As you know, he is our best defensive interior guy and on the line there. And, you know, we need to get him settled. So Spider Burns, the illustrious number 0 now, can be terrorizing people for years to come.
And you know what's going to be fun is coming in January, we're going to be able to do some sports betting right here in North Carolina. We'll be able to throw some money on the remaining games and the Super Bowl. So
absolutely
super fun.
Yeah, and we won't have to VPN or actually, for my sake, go across the line anymore.
Yeah, you don't have to go to Danville or Vegas or it'd be really fantastic. Hopefully we get some casinos and take it a little further, but I know PNC Arena here in Raleigh is going to be one of the locations, which is not very far from me.
Right.
I don't know where you're going to have to go, maybe Greensboro.
Yeah, to the country club there, but you know that they're also going to license mobile sports bettors. Sports bettors like Caesars, like DraftKings, like
they will. Like Caesars,
Barstool, and all those guys.
That'd be the best source right there.
So, you know, I'm hoping for that because I know people that use those sites that really love them, think they have great user interfaces,
and they don't want to travel. They don't want to go to Raleigh or Charlotte or Wilmington or Greensboro for it, or Danville even.
Right.
Right from the privacy of your own home, which is really ideal and convenient for so many people. So
absolutely.
Thank you to all the legislators who passed that bill.
Right. I'm happy they did.
But keep it going.
Yes. Yes. Keep it going. As I told you before, I'm sort of glad they're doing it in this fashion. They're letting private folks take control of it, just granting licenses to do it. I'm hoping we get much more of those licenses available for betting houses. That's all they are. They're just betting parlors.
Yeah.
You know? And just, you know, give them a license. I've got this empty building. I want to run a betting parlor in here. Here's, whatever the license fee is. Give me a certificate. I promise I'm not running, money laundering through here,
Right.
But anyway, I believe that's all for this week. I want to thank you again for doing this. Full disclosure, we're sort of doing this somewhat without a producer this week. He was having connectivity issues, so I've had to become the interim producer as well as one of the hosts. And I want to thank my buddy Travis Grew here for getting on my feed here and completing this. And of course, as always, keep the fires burning for liberty. And thank y'all for watching Liberty Inc.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone.